Friends, if you want to watch the highly anticipated science fiction horror movie Alien Romulus 2024 in English, then make sure to like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more updates on upcoming movies and entertainment breakdowns. In today's video, we will discuss everything you need to know about Alien Romulus 2024, including what the movie is about, where you can watch it, its behind-the-scenes details, and why it has become one of the most talked-about films of the year. We'll explore the technical aspects, including cinematography, sound design, editing, and production quality, as well as the story, performances, and box office performance. So, stay tuned till the end because you will get a complete understanding of this exciting entry in the Alien franchise. Alien Romulus 2024 is a standalone installment in the legendary Alien film series created by Ridley Scott. Directed by Fede Álvarez, the movie takes the franchise back to its horror roots while introducing a new generation of characters. Set between the events of Alien, 1979, and Aliens, 1986, it focuses on a group of young space colonists who encounter the deadly Xenomorph creatures while exploring an abandoned space station. The film blends claustrophobic horror and science fiction action with a strong sense of tension, echoing the tone of the original films that made the Alien series iconic. The movie stars Spaeny in the lead role, supported by David Johnson, Archie Renault, Isabela Merced, Spike Fern, and Aileen Wu. Each actor brings intensity and realism to their characters, capturing the fear and survival instinct that define the Alien universe. Spaeny's performance, in particular, has been praised for balancing emotional depth with the resilience required to face the alien threat. The cast's chemistry adds to the film's suspenseful atmosphere, making each scene feel authentic and high stakes. Alien Romulus 2024 was produced by Ridley Scott under Scott Free Productions in collaboration with 20th Century Studios. The film's development began several years ago when Fede Álvarez pitched his vision for a smaller-scale, horror-driven alien story. The script was co-written by Alvarez and Rodó, aiming to recapture the terror of the original while modernizing the visuals and pacing for today's audiences. Pre-production involved designing new versions of the Xenomorphs and creating detailed sets that reflect the decaying, industrial style of the Alien universe. Filming took place primarily in Budapest, Hungary, where large-scale practical sets were built to bring the derelict space environments to life. Alvarez relied heavily on practical effects rather than pure CGI to maintain a sense of realism and physical danger. The use of real sets and animatronic aliens gives the movie an authentic texture that echoes the earlier films. Cinematographer Alvarez worked closely with the director to craft moody, shadow-filled visuals that enhance the horror atmosphere. The film's music, composed by Benjamin Wallfisch, plays a vital role in creating tension and fear. The score combines eerie soundscapes with orchestral undertones, building suspense during key moments. Sound design is another highlight, featuring the unsettling hiss and screech of the Xenomorphs that longtime fans will immediately recognize. The editing by Louise Ford keeps the pacing tight, balancing slow-burn suspense with bursts of intense action. Alien Romulus had a production budget of around $75 million, significantly lower than some previous installments, which helped Alvarez maintain creative control and focus on storytelling rather than large-scale spectacle. Despite the moderate budget, the film looks visually stunning, proving that atmosphere and craftsmanship matter more than heavy visual effects. Upon release, the movie opened to strong box office numbers, performing especially well among science fiction and horror audiences. Critics praised its direction, tension, and performances, calling it one of the best Alien films in decades. In terms of story, Alien Romulus delivers a self-contained yet familiar experience. A group of young space settlers exploring a distant planet stumble upon an abandoned research station. As they investigate, they unknowingly awaken a deadly species that begins to hunt them one by one. The film explores themes of isolation, survival, and human curiosity, mirroring the tone and tension of the original Alien. While it doesn't rely heavily on connections to other films, it includes subtle references and Easter eggs for longtime fans of the series. The performances of the cast elevate the emotional weight of the story. Cailee Spaeny's character acts as both a survivor and leader, balancing vulnerability with determination. David Johnson brings intelligence and charm to his role, while Isabela Merced's presence adds emotional contrast and strength. The ensemble cast works effectively together to create genuine fear and panic as the alien threat intensifies. Overall, Alien Romulus 2024 successfully reinvigorates the franchise with a back-to-basics approach. Fede Álvarez's direction combines atmospheric horror with modern cinematic energy, creating a film that feels both nostalgic and fresh. Its strong visuals, chilling sound design, and well-executed performances make it a must-watch for sci-fi and horror fans alike. Whether you are a longtime follower of the Alien series or a newcomer, Alien Romulus delivers a gripping experience that honors the original while carving its own place in the saga. Alien Romulus 2024 is a dark and intense science fiction horror film directed by Fede Álvarez that returns the Alien franchise to its terrifying roots. Set between the events of Ridley Scott's Alien, 1979, and James Cameron's Aliens, 1986, the story follows a young group of space colonists who unknowingly unleash a horrifying alien lifeform while scavenging a derelict space station. The film blends claustrophobic horror, survival drama, and high-tension science fiction in a way that honors the classic installments while giving the saga a fresh perspective. The main character is Cailee, played by Cailee Spaeny, a determined young woman who works as a miner on a remote industrial colony called Jackson Star. Life on the colony is brutal and hopeless, controlled by the mega-corporation Weyland-Yutani. Rain dreams of escaping to a better world, but her contract keeps her trapped. When she learns about an abandoned research facility orbiting a distant planet, she convinces her small group of friends to risk everything to steal supplies and find a way out of their miserable existence. The crew includes Tyler Harrison, played by Archie Renault, Rain's former boyfriend who still cares for her but struggles with his own fears. His sister Kay, played by Isabela Merced, is a strong and intelligent woman who is also pregnant, a detail that adds emotional weight and danger to the story. David Johnson plays Andy, a reprogrammed synthetic android who serves as Rain's protective companion and acts like a brother to her. The group is rounded out by Bjorn, played by Spike Fern, a reckless and impulsive member of the crew, and Navarro, played by Aileen Wu, the pilot who tries to keep everyone together. Together, they steal a cargo vessel called the Corbelan 4 and head toward a mysterious abandoned Weyland-Yutani station named Renaissance. The station is divided into two connected sections, Romulus and Remus. When the crew docks, they find the massive structure dark, silent, and eerily preserved. Inside, they discover signs of scientific experiments, strange organic residue, and records hinting at secret bioengineering programs. Their curiosity leads them to explore deeper, and they awaken something ancient and deadly. In one of the sealed labs, they find a dormant containment pod carrying a specimen of an unknown species. Despite Andy's warnings, the group decides to take it back to their ship, hoping to sell it for money. However, the specimen turns out to be connected to the terrifying Xenomorph species known for their deadly life cycle. The moment the pod is opened, the horror begins. A facehugger attaches itself to one of the crew members, setting off a chain reaction of infection, panic, and death. The Xenomorph life cycle unfolds in terrifying fashion as the creature bursts from its host and grows rapidly, stalking the survivors through the narrow corridors of the station. The crew is forced to confront their worst fears as they try to find a way off the doomed facility. Each member faces moral choices and personal demons while the creature hunts them one by one. The confined spaces, flickering lights, and constant tension bring back the atmosphere that made the original Alien films so effective. As the situation worsens, Rain takes charge, showing courage and leadership. Her relationship with the android Andy becomes central to the story. Andy's programming pushes him to protect her at all costs, but as his systems begin to malfunction, he faces his own crisis of identity and emotion. Their bond provides the film with a layer of humanity amidst the terror. Rain's drive for survival and Andy's loyalty make their dynamic both tragic and compelling. The film introduces a terrifying new mutation called the Offspring. This creature is born from the hybridization between the alien organism and human biology, specifically connected to Kay's pregnancy after she comes into contact with a mysterious chemical called Z01. The result is a horrifying variation of the traditional xenomorph, blending the features of both species. The offspring grows faster and exhibits unpredictable behavior, adding a new dimension to the horror. As the survivors dwindle, Rain and Andy must find a way to destroy the aliens before the creatures spread beyond the station. The climax is filled with intense action and emotional sacrifice. Rain's resilience and Andy's self-awareness reach their peak when they make a desperate attempt to escape, knowing that the threat can never be fully contained. The film ends on an ambiguous note, leaving room for future installments while giving a satisfying conclusion to their story. Alien Romulus succeeds by returning to the core of what made the series iconic: fear of the unknown, corporate greed, and the struggle for survival in an uncaring universe. The movie uses practical effects, detailed set designs, and atmospheric lighting to create a tangible sense of dread. The performances, especially by Cailee Spaeny and David Johnson, bring heart and intensity to the narrative. The music by Benjamin Wallfish and the sound design amplify every moment of suspense, while the production design pays homage to the gritty, industrial look of the original films. In summary, Alien Romulus 2024 tells a chilling and emotional story about survival, trust, and humanity in the face of unimaginable horror. It stands as a worthy addition to the Alien saga, combining the psychological terror of the first film with the energy of modern filmmaking. Through its young cast, tight storytelling, and terrifying new creature design, it revitalizes the franchise while staying true to its legacy. Alien Romulus 2024 begins with a haunting visual of deep space surrounding the mining colony known as Jackson Star, a world consumed by darkness, industry, and corporate control. The opening image immediately establishes the tone of isolation and desperation that defines the film. We meet Rain Carradine, a young miner trapped in the endless cycle of corporate labor under Weyland-Yutani. Her life is hard, her dreams distant, and her freedom non-existent. From the start, the narrative positions Rain as a character driven by hope and rebellion, willing to take dangerous risks for the promise of escape. This opening setup creates empathy for her and sets the foundation for the coming horror. The inciting incident occurs when Rain learns about an abandoned Weyland-Yutani research facility orbiting a nearby planet. Rumors suggest it still holds valuable cryochambers and supplies that could help her and her friends leave the system. With her small group, Tyler, his pregnant sister Kay, the reckless Bjorn, the cautious pilot Navarro, and Andy, her loyal android companion, Rain decides to steal a ship and head toward the derelict station called Renaissance. This decision marks the story's first major turning point, as the characters move from the known world of the colony to the unknown void of space, echoing the structure of the original Alien. As the rising action unfolds, the group docks with the Renaissance, which consists of two massive connected modules named Romulus and Remus. The filmmakers use this structure symbolically to reflect themes of duality: creation and destruction, life and death, humanity and artificiality. The crew begins to explore the abandoned corridors, discovering signs of previous experiments, decayed laboratories, and scattered data logs that hint at secret bioweapon research. The tension builds gradually as the audience learns fragments of what happened, while the characters remain mostly unaware of the danger they've awakened. One of the early suspenseful sequences occurs when the crew discovers a sealed containment pod holding what appears to be a dormant organism. Andy, programmed with protective instincts, warns them not to interfere, but curiosity and desperation drive them to open it. This is the exact midpoint of the story where everything changes. A facehugger escapes and attaches itself to one of the crew members, reigniting the nightmare that has haunted the franchise for decades. This moment is the narrative's sharpest pivot, transforming the tone from a slow-burn mystery to full survival horror. From here, the tension escalates rapidly. The characters begin to die one by one, hunted by the creature that grows stronger and more intelligent with every encounter. The narrative structure remains linear, but the film's pacing alternates between quiet, claustrophobic dread and bursts of chaotic terror. Alvarez's direction emphasizes unpredictability. He allows key information to be revealed through the environment rather than exposition. The audience learns what the characters do, when they do, creating a shared sense of fear and discovery. This design keeps viewers emotionally aligned with the survivors, rather than observing from a safe distance. Midway through the film, a new revelation deepens the story's complexity. Kay, who is pregnant, begins to experience strange symptoms after exposure to a mysterious chemical compound called Z01. It's revealed that the substance was part of an abandoned experiment to accelerate xenomorph development through genetic blending. This subplot becomes the emotional and thematic core of the film, exploring motherhood, creation, and corruption, key motifs in the Alien universe. The infection grows, and the crew realizes that the experiment may have created a new hybrid creature known as the Offspring, a terrifying evolution of the xenomorph species. The emotional peak of the narrative comes when Rain and Andy face the truth about their situation. Andy's programming begins to fail, causing him to question his identity and loyalty. His affection for Rain transcends his mechanical nature, creating one of the film's most powerful relationships. As the survivors shrink to just Rain, Andy, and Kay, the story tightens into an intense chase through the dying space station. The revelation that the offspring was born through Kay's altered pregnancy shocks both the characters and the audience, bringing the film's recurring themes of human experimentation and the dangers of corporate greed full circle. The climax arrives as Rain and Andy make their final attempt to destroy the alien threat. They devise a plan to vent the remaining xenomorphs and the offspring into space by overloading the station's reactor. The tension reaches its highest point when Andy sacrifices himself to ensure the plan succeeds, holding off the creature long enough for Rain to escape. His final words express not programming but emotion, emphasizing how far he has evolved. Rain barely escapes in a shuttle, watching from orbit as the station explodes in silence, erasing all evidence of what happened. The ending image mirrors the beginning, Rain alone against the vastness of space, but now she is transformed. The narrative closes on ambiguity, leaving the audience to question whether she is truly free or merely the next carrier of the horror she tried to escape. The structure of Alien Romulus is tight and deliberate, designed to mirror the cyclical nature of fear and survival that defines the franchise. By combining linear storytelling with carefully timed reveals, the film builds tension while allowing room for emotional connection and thematic resonance. In the end, Alien Romulus 2024 succeeds not just as a horror film but as a character-driven journey. Its narrative choices highlight humanity's constant struggle against forces it cannot control, both technological and biological. Through its pacing, symbolism, and emotional depth, the story delivers a terrifying yet meaningful experience that stands proudly within the Alien legacy. Alien Romulus 2024 builds its emotional power not just from its atmosphere or horror, but from the complex characters who drive its story forward. Each of the central figures begins with a clear personal goal or emotional wound, and as the events unfold, their motivations collide with fear, survival, and moral conflict. The film uses character development as a mirror to explore larger questions about humanity, artificial life, and the cost of ambition. By the end, the surviving characters are transformed, physically, emotionally, and psychologically, by their encounter with the unknown. Rain Carradine, played by Cailee Spaeny, is the clear protagonist and emotional core of the film. At the beginning, she is a young miner living under the control of Weyland-Yutani, filled with resentment toward the corporation that has trapped her in endless servitude. Rain's primary motivation is freedom. She wants to escape the mining colony and build a life beyond the reach of corporate oppression. This desire fuels every decision she makes, from stealing a ship to venturing into the derelict station. Her flaw, however, is her recklessness and her willingness to take risks without fully understanding the consequences. This impulsiveness becomes her greatest obstacle as the film progresses, placing her and her friends in constant danger. Throughout the story, Rain's arc evolves from survival-driven independence to emotional leadership. At first, she distances herself from others, including her android companion Andy, because she fears attachment will make her weak. But as the crisis unfolds, she learns that survival depends on connection, trust, and sacrifice. A quiet scene midway through the film, where Rain confides in Andy about her past and admits that she never believed she would make it off the colony, marks a key turning point in her development. By the end, her choices show maturity. She leads decisively, prioritizes others over herself, and ultimately earns the freedom she sought, even though it comes at a terrible cost. Andy, played by David Johnson, serves as both Rain's companion and the film's most complex secondary character. As a reprogrammed synthetic designed for labor and protection, Andy begins the story defined by his function. His bond with Rain, however, pushes him beyond his programming. His initial goal is simple: to keep Rain safe. But as the film unfolds, Andy develops a sense of individuality and emotional awareness. His evolution reflects the long-standing alien theme of artificial beings struggling with humanity. A subtle gesture, Andy hesitating before following Rain's order to leave a dying crew member behind, reveals his growing moral consciousness. By the final act, Andy's transformation is complete. He no longer acts solely out of mechanical duty but genuine emotion. His self-sacrifice during the climax is the film's emotional high point, representing not just loyalty but love in its purest form. Through Andy, the film questions what it truly means to be human. While the humans around him often make selfish or panicked decisions, Andy's empathy and courage redefine morality in a world corrupted by fear and greed. Kay Harrison, portrayed by Isabela Merced, embodies the film's emotional and thematic subtext. Pregnant and protective of her unborn child, she represents creation and vulnerability in contrast to the destructive alien force. At the beginning, Kay is hopeful and nurturing, often serving as the moral compass of the group. However, her infection with the experimental compound Z01 transforms her physically and emotionally. Her arc mirrors the horror of motherhood twisted by science and corporate interference. The moment Kay realizes her pregnancy has been altered by the alien biology is devastating. It shifts her from victim to tragic figure, a symbol of humanity's hubris in trying to manipulate life. Archie Renoa's Tyler serves as both Rain's past and her emotional foil. Once her romantic partner, he still harbors affection and regret. At the start, Tyler wants redemption for failing Rain in the past, but his fear and indecision continually undermine him. His journey is one of internal conflict. He wants to protect his sister and make amends with Rain, yet he hesitates when action is required. His death midway through the film is a pivotal emotional moment that solidifies Rain's resolve. It's not just another casualty, it's a personal loss that forces her to embrace leadership and accountability. Bjorn, played by Spike Fern, and Navarro, played by Aileen Wu, have smaller but meaningful arcs. Bjorn begins as reckless and arrogant, often dismissing warnings about the dangers of the station. His impulsiveness leads directly to the group's downfall, symbolizing youthful overconfidence. His death, caused by his own curiosity, serves as a warning about the cost of ignorance. Navarro, on the other hand, starts as pragmatic and emotionally distant but grows into a voice of reason. Her quiet death scene, where she records a message for anyone who might find their ship, shows both bravery and humanity in the face of hopelessness. The antagonist, the Xenomorph, is more than just a monster. It represents humanity's destructive desire to control life and nature. The creature has no dialogue or moral compass, yet its presence forces every character to reveal who they truly are. The offspring, the hybrid creature born from Kay's mutation, deepens this symbolism. It stands for corporate ambition gone too far, a creation that should never exist. The creature's existence drives Rain's transformation and reinforces the film's message about the consequences of unchecked scientific exploration. By the end of Alien Romulus, every surviving character has changed profoundly. Rain becomes a symbol of resilience and moral awakening. Andy's death leaves an emotional scar but also completes his journey toward humanity. Kay's tragic arc exposes the cruelty of manipulation in the name of progress. Together, their development elevates the film beyond standard horror. It becomes a story about identity, compassion, and the blurred boundaries between creation and destruction. Each small gesture, glance, and decision contributes to a layered portrait of survival and self-discovery in the darkest corners of space. Alien Romulus 2024 stands out not only for its direction and atmosphere but also for its ensemble cast, which grounds the sci-fi horror in raw emotion and realism. The performances give weight to the terror, turning what could have been a simple monster movie into an emotionally layered story of survival, loss, and connection. Each actor brings a unique energy to their role, using subtle expressions, tone shifts, and physical commitment to make the film's intensity feel authentic. Even though the setting is futuristic, the performances remain deeply human, allowing audiences to connect to the fear and resilience at the center of the story. Cailee Spaeny, as Rain Carradine, delivers a commanding and emotionally complex performance. From her first appearance, she embodies Rain's exhaustion and quiet determination with precision. Her portrayal balances toughness with vulnerability, never letting one overpower the other. In early scenes, Spaeny uses small gestures, a clenched jaw, a downward glance, a restrained exhale, to communicate Rain's frustration with corporate control and her desire for escape. As the film progresses, those same restrained gestures evolve into expressions of resolve and courage. Her transformation feels organic, the result of accumulated trauma rather than sudden empowerment. One of her strongest scenes comes when Rain confronts the aftermath of losing Tyler and must take leadership over the remaining crew. The camera lingers on her face, and Spaeny communicates grief, anger, and clarity all at once without a single line of dialogue. It's a defining moment that reveals why she anchors the entire film. David Johnson's portrayal of the android Andy is equally striking but in a quieter, more nuanced way. Johnson gives Andy both mechanical precision and unexpected emotional warmth. His physical movements are deliberate and slightly too smooth, reminding viewers that he isn't human, yet his voice carries empathy and subtle inflection. The actor manages to make Andy's gradual awakening to self-awareness feel believable, avoiding the clichés of robotic emotionlessness. A particularly memorable moment comes when Andy hesitates to follow Rain's order to abandon a dying crewmate. The hesitation lasts only a few seconds, but Johnson's expression shows the battle between programming and conscience. By the time Andy sacrifices himself in the climax, his voice trembles with sincerity, proving that Johnson has turned a synthetic character into the film's most human presence. Isabela Merced as Kay Harrison brings both warmth and tragedy to her performance. Kay begins as the emotional center of the group, a caring sister and hopeful mother-to-be, but Merced allows cracks of fear and doubt to appear as the story unfolds. Her performance is layered with subtle choices that reveal Kay's inner strength even as her physical condition deteriorates. When she discovers that her pregnancy has been corrupted by the alien substance, Merced delivers the film's most devastating emotional beat. Her quiet breakdown, whispering disbelief and horror rather than screaming, makes the scene far more chilling. She captures both maternal instinct and existential dread, transforming Kay from a side character into a tragic symbol of humanity's reckless ambition. Archie Renault plays Tyler with grounded realism, portraying him as both flawed and sympathetic. His chemistry with Spaeny gives the film its emotional grounding, especially in the early acts. The tension between them feels lived in. Small touches, shared glances, and unspoken regret suggest a long, complicated history. Renault doesn't have as many standout monologues, but his performance shines in reactive moments. When the alien attack begins, his panic feels genuine rather than exaggerated, which helps the audience identify with the terror. His death scene is brief but impactful because Renault underplays it. Instead of dramatizing fear, he shows resignation, which adds to the sense of hopelessness that defines the film. Spike Fern as Bjorn brings raw energy to his role, embodying youthful arrogance and recklessness. His character often injects tension into group dynamics, and Fern captures that edge through restless body language and impulsive speech. His curiosity and defiance make his fate feel both inevitable and tragic. The moment he removes his helmet against orders, leading to his infection, plays as both a mistake and a character revelation. His need to prove himself becomes his downfall. Fern's performance makes that moment resonate beyond just being another death scene. Aileen Wu as Navarro provides quiet strength, grounding the more chaotic characters with measured calm. Her voice is steady and confident, and her delivery carries a sense of experience and authority. She may not have as much screen time, but Wu's performance lingers. One of her standout moments comes late in the film when she records a final message for anyone who might find their ship. Her voice remains calm, yet the tremor beneath it reveals the weight of fear. It's a simple moment, but it encapsulates the humanity that runs through the film. The ensemble's chemistry is another highlight. Alvarez's direction relies heavily on natural interaction rather than forced dialogue, and the cast responds with understated realism. Conversations overlap, pauses feel uncomfortable, and emotional beats are allowed to breathe. The relationships, especially between Rain and Andy, and between Kay and Tyler, feel genuine because the actors commit fully to emotional truth rather than performance flourishes. If there is a weakness in the performances, it lies not in talent but in limited screen time for certain characters. With the film's focus on pacing and tension, some supporting roles fade too quickly to make a lasting impression. However, this choice also serves the story's theme of unpredictability and loss. Benjamin Wallfish's score and Gallo Olivares's cinematography give the actors room to shine. The tight framing forces the audience into intimate proximity with their expressions, turning every whisper or flicker of fear into something monumental. In the end, Alien Romulus 2024 succeeds because its cast commits fully to the emotional and physical demands of the material. Cailee Spaeny and David Johnson deliver standout performances that elevate the film from standard genre fare to a moving exploration of humanity and fear. Every actor, from lead to supporting, contributes to the suffocating tension and emotional resonance that make Alien Romulus a worthy continuation of the franchise's legacy. Fede Álvarez's direction in Alien Romulus 2024 demonstrates a filmmaker who deeply understands both the heritage of the Alien franchise and the demands of modern horror. His vision fuses atmosphere, pacing, and character-driven storytelling into a cohesive and tense experience. Rather than relying solely on spectacle, Alvarez prioritizes tone and emotional immersion. Every shot, movement, and sound is calibrated to maintain a sense of claustrophobia and unease. The result is a film that honors Ridley Scott's original vision while carving out its own distinct identity within the series. From the opening sequence, Alvarez establishes his control over pacing and tone. The early scenes unfold slowly, with quiet moments that allow tension to simmer before the horror fully ignites. He uses silence as effectively as he uses sound. Empty corridors hum faintly, lights flicker, and every footstep echoes. This methodical build-up recalls the restrained horror of the first Alien, where fear grows from anticipation rather than jump scares. When violence finally erupts, it feels earned and terrifying because Alvarez has made the audience wait for it. His decision to emphasize atmosphere over action grounds the film in psychological horror rather than spectacle-driven sci-fi. The pacing of Alien Romulus reflects Alvarez's deliberate directorial style. He avoids the rapid editing often seen in modern horror, opting instead for longer takes and patient tracking shots that draw the viewer deeper into the environment. His camera often lingers just a few seconds longer than expected, forcing the audience to confront what might emerge from the shadows. This approach creates a sustained sense of dread. The longer the camera refuses to cut away, the more the viewer's imagination fills the void. The technique recalls classic horror filmmaking, where restraint and suggestion amplify fear more effectively than graphic imagery. Alvarez also uses spatial awareness masterfully. The ship's design, tight corridors, dim lighting, and layered industrial textures, becomes a character in itself. His camera explores these spaces with deliberate precision, emphasizing how confined and vulnerable the crew truly is. When the alien appears, the geography of the ship becomes crucial. Alvarez ensures that every chase and confrontation is clear in layout, which keeps tension grounded in realism rather than chaos. One of his key strengths lies in his ability to balance practical effects with modern visual technology. Alvarez's background in tactile horror, evident in films like Evil Dead and Don't Breathe, informs his approach here. He uses practical creature design and physical sets to create a tangible world. The alien is not just a digital presence but a physical menace that casts real shadows and occupies real space. This choice enhances immersion and gives the film a gritty, authentic texture. By minimizing reliance on CGI, Alvarez restores the tactile terror that made the original Alien so effective. His direction also extends deeply into how performances are shaped. Rather than staging his actors as victims in a monster film, he treats them as human beings grappling with fear, guilt, and survival. He often allows scenes to breathe with overlapping dialogue, quiet hesitation, and visible exhaustion. This realism strengthens the emotional core of the film. Alvarez gives Cailee Spaeny room to express vulnerability without losing her authority, and guides David Johnson toward a performance that balances empathy and detachment. He values small, human gestures, shaking hands, shallow breaths, darting eyes, as much as he values large emotional outbursts. This approach keeps the film emotionally grounded even as the horror escalates. Visually, Alvarez displays a clear stylistic signature. He favors atmospheric close-ups and slow pans rather than abrupt cuts. His compositions often isolate characters against vast industrial backdrops, reinforcing their insignificance in the face of cosmic terror. He also employs color strategically. The muted grays and metallic blues of the ship contrast sharply with the dark, wet textures of the alien environment, creating a visual language of human order being consumed by chaos. Lighting plays an essential role in his direction. Alvarez uses minimal light sources, often just a flashlight beam or a blinking control panel, to guide attention and heighten suspense. Shadows dominate the frame, making every corner a potential threat. This visual strategy not only evokes the aesthetics of Ridley Scott's original, but also infuses it with modern intensity. Where Scott's film was painterly and patient, Alvarez's vision is raw and kinetic while maintaining respect for silence and stillness. However, Alvarez's direction is not without its risks. Some viewers may find his pacing overly deliberate, especially in the first act, where narrative momentum occasionally slows under the weight of atmosphere. His refusal to rush character introductions means that the film builds tension gradually, which can test the patience of those expecting immediate action. Yet, for those who appreciate deliberate storytelling, this choice enhances the eventual payoff. Another potentially divisive choice is his tendency to hold on scenes of horror for extended beats. The camera doesn't cut away when violence occurs. Instead, it lingers, forcing the audience to confront the brutality. This can be discomforting but also aligns with his philosophy of immersion. Rather than letting the audience escape through editing, Alvarez makes them feel trapped alongside the characters. His control over sound design is equally meticulous. He uses silence as an instrument of dread, punctuated by metallic creaks, distant hisses, and the muffled thrum of machinery. Even the alien's breathing becomes part of the score. When music does enter, Benjamin Wallfish's compositions echo the atmospheric tones of Jerry Goldsmith's original score, guided by Alvarez's restraint. The music never overwhelms, it creeps in, heightening tension without dictating emotion. In the broader sense, Alvarez's direction successfully bridges old and new. He respects the DNA of the franchise while reinterpreting it for a modern audience. His choices, long tracking shots, claustrophobic framing, and emotional authenticity, reflect a filmmaker who values precision over spectacle. Each sequence, from the haunting opening to the harrowing finale, carries his fingerprints. He builds tension through structure and rhythm rather than cheap tricks, trusting the audience to lean into discomfort. Ultimately, Fede Álvarez's direction makes Alien Romulus 2024 not just another installment but a revitalization of the series' core identity. His vision embraces fear as something intimate and slow-burning rather than explosive. Through deliberate pacing, atmospheric visuals, and character-driven horror, Alvarez crafts a film that feels both timeless and contemporary, proving that great direction is not about control alone. It's about knowing when to let tension breathe and when to strike without warning. The cinematography of Alien Romulus 2024, crafted by Alvarez, stands as one of the film's strongest achievements. Every frame contributes to the overall experience of dread, claustrophobia, and vulnerability. Rather than functioning merely as decoration, the camera work is essential to how the story unfolds, shaping our emotional engagement and understanding of the world within the film. From the first shot, Alvarez sets a tone that feels both familiar to the Alien franchise and distinctly modern. The visuals are dark, industrial, and atmospheric, echoing the cold metallic environments of the Nostromo from Ridley Scott's 1979 original, while integrating a more grounded sense of realism. The color palette is dominated by steel blues, muted grays, and the occasional intrusion of red emergency lighting, creating a harsh, mechanical tone that underscores the crew's isolation. These colors communicate not only the aesthetic of space but also the psychological landscape of the characters, trapped, tense, and perpetually on edge. Lighting in Alien Romulus is an exercise in precision and restraint. Alvarez and director Fede Álvarez make brilliant use of minimal illumination. Much of the film relies on practical light sources, flashlights, flickering panels, and the dim glow of monitors, which roots the horror in physical space. The darkness is never absolute, but always oppressive. The light that exists feels earned, and its scarcity makes every reveal more impactful. When a face is partially lit, when a corridor disappears into shadow, the audience senses that danger might be anywhere. This interplay of light and dark doesn't just enhance fear, it mirrors the film's thematic tension between knowledge and ignorance, between human curiosity and the cosmic unknown. The camera movement in Alien Romulus is deliberate and controlled. Alvarez favors slow pans, creeping dolly shots, and steady tracking that builds anticipation. The camera rarely rushes, it stalks. This approach echoes the way the alien itself moves, unseen but always near. Instead of flashy kinetic energy, the cinematography relies on patience. The audience's eye is guided carefully through space, allowing tension to build naturally. When the alien finally appears, the sense of movement becomes sharper, faster, and more chaotic, mirroring the character's panic. These shifts in rhythm show how cinematography and narrative work together to modulate the audience's pulse. Framing is a crucial storytelling device throughout the film. Wide shots are used sparingly but powerfully, often to emphasize scale and vulnerability. When the crew steps into a vast hangar or explores the derelict spacecraft, Alvarez pulls back to show how small they are within the industrial labyrinth of metal and shadow. These moments of wide framing serve as reminders of insignificance, tiny humans in an indifferent universe. Conversely, tight framing dominates much of the film. Faces are shot in close-up, with shallow focus isolating characters from their surroundings. This technique reinforces the psychological tension, trapping the audience alongside the crew. You can feel the walls closing in, the oxygen thinning, and the fear amplifying. The camera becomes a participant in the claustrophobia rather than an observer. One of the film's visual strengths lies in its compositional balance. Every shot feels meticulously constructed yet natural. Symmetry often appears in early scenes, with clean, centered compositions suggesting control and order aboard the ship. As chaos takes over, that symmetry collapses, angles become canted, framing becomes off-center, and the sense of spatial stability deteriorates. This subtle shift visualizes the breakdown of both physical and emotional order. Alvarez's cinematography also distinguishes itself in how it uses color to communicate shifts in tone and emotion. The film begins with a relatively neutral palette, dominated by cold industrial tones. As the alien threat grows, warmer hues invade the frame, amber emergency lights, red alarms, and the orange glow of fire. These colors signal the encroaching danger and the breakdown of the crew's safety. By the time the film reaches its climax, the palette becomes almost monochromatic, drenched in shadow and smoke, or even color seems consumed by darkness. It's a visual metaphor for the story's descent into chaos and primal fear. The use of reflection and perspective adds another layer of visual storytelling. Windows, helmet visors, and glass surfaces are frequently employed to frame the characters, symbolizing isolation and duality. A character's reflection often occupies as much of the frame as their real face, hinting at inner conflict or the presence of unseen threats. In some sequences, the camera peers through barriers, grates, vents, or fogged glass, creating the sense that we are observing through the environment itself. This reinforces the voyeuristic tension central to the Alien universe, where both human and creature are hunters and prey. A particularly memorable sequence takes place in a narrow maintenance corridor lit only by a single strobing source. The flicker alternates between complete darkness and brief flashes of visibility. Alvarez uses the rhythm of the light to choreograph movement, revealing fragments of terror one frame at a time. This scene exemplifies his ability to use cinematography as a storytelling tool rather than a mere visual effect. It's not about showing the monster, it's about showing the fear of not seeing it. Another standout sequence occurs in the vacuum of space, where Alvarez contrasts vast emptiness with the intimate terror of a single astronaut spinning helplessly. The camera's slow rotation mimics disorientation, emphasizing human fragility against the void. These moments of spatial tension connect the visual design to the film's existential themes, the horror of insignificance and the fragility of life. The cinematography also respects the franchise's legacy while pushing its visual boundaries. Alvarez references the gritty realism of Ridley Scott's original and the blue steel tones of James Cameron's Aliens, but strips away the more militarized aesthetic of later installments. Instead, he returns to the stripped-down survival horror look: tight spaces, harsh lights, wet surfaces, and tactile textures. Yet, the execution feels new, thanks to the clarity of modern digital cinematography and the discipline of analog-style lighting. In the end, the cinematography of Alien Romulus 2024 is not just a technical triumph but an emotional one. It tells the story visually through tension, shadow, and confinement. Every shot reinforces the sensation that something is lurking just out of view. By blending minimalism with precision, Alvarez captures the essence of fear, what we cannot see but can feel pressing in from every direction. His camera does not merely record events, it traps the viewer within them, making the horror of Alien Romulus not just witnessed but experienced. The editing and pacing of Alien Romulus 2024 play a critical role in shaping its tension, atmosphere, and emotional rhythm. Under the careful supervision of editors Pietro Scalia and Luis Carballo, the film maintains a deliberate pace that aligns with Fede Álvarez's restrained, immersive approach to storytelling. Rather than following the fast-cut, action-heavy style of many contemporary sci-fi horror films, Alien Romulus embraces measured editing that allows the story and characters to breathe while steadily tightening the noose of suspense. The film's editing philosophy is built on control and patience. From the opening frames, it signals that time will not move quickly in this world. Scalia and Carballo use extended takes and slow transitions to establish a rhythm of anticipation rather than immediate gratification. The first act, in particular, unfolds at a measured tempo, giving viewers time to absorb the world of the derelict space station and the uneasy dynamics among the young crew. This approach mirrors the classic Alien structure: quiet exploration before the storm. Each scene flows into the next with subtle continuity edits that make the passage of time feel seamless and immersive. Instead of quick exposition, the film builds information through lingering shots, overlapping dialogue, and visual storytelling. This slow pacing sets the tone for a horror experience rooted in dread rather than shock. However, within this deliberate structure, the editors introduce careful variations in rhythm to maintain engagement. Moments of dialogue and exploration are contrasted with sharp bursts of chaos when the alien strikes. These transitions between calm and terror are handled with precision. The cuts become quicker and more erratic during attacks, but never incoherent. The editing ensures that geography and perspective remain clear even as tension spikes. When panic spreads, the rhythm of the cuts mirrors the character's heartbeat, accelerating just enough to convey urgency without disorienting the viewer. One of the most striking aspects of the editing is its relationship with sound and silence. Scalia and Carballo understand that restraint can be more powerful than noise. In many key sequences, the absence of sound defines the editing rhythm. Shots are held for several beats longer than expected, allowing ambient mechanical hums and character breathing to dominate the soundscape. This use of temporal space gives the audience time to anticipate movement in the shadows. The lack of quick cuts makes viewers hyper-aware of every flicker of light and distant echo. It's a form of psychological manipulation where editing becomes an invisible source of fear. In contrast, when sound explodes, metal scraping, alarms blaring, or the alien's shriek, the editors deliberately shorten shot durations to amplify chaos. The collision of quiet and noise becomes a rhythmic pulse that drives the entire film. Cross-cutting is another tool used to sustain tension and connect parallel storylines. In the film's midsection, when multiple crew members explore separate parts of the station, Scalia and Carballer weave their narratives together through fluid intercutting. This not only maintains suspense but also builds dramatic irony. The audience often knows danger is approaching one character before they do, creating a sense of helpless anticipation. The editors balance these shifts carefully so that no single thread loses momentum. Transitions between locations are often motivated by sound bridges, a mechanical noise or alarm continuing across cuts, keeping the audience grounded in continuity even as scenes change. The film occasionally uses brief flashbacks and fragmented memories, particularly from Rain Carradine's perspective. These moments are not overused but serve to deepen emotional stakes. The editors integrate them with subtle fades and visual dissolves rather than abrupt jumps. The rhythm slows during these sequences, offering temporary reprieve from the mounting tension while providing insight into the protagonist's fears and motivations. These moments of reflection give structure to the narrative and help the audience emotionally reset before the next surge of horror. The second act demonstrates the editor's mastery of modulation. After the initial discoveries and first attack, the pacing becomes tighter and more dynamic. Scalia and Carballer shorten the average shot length without abandoning clarity, propelling the film into its most suspenseful phase. Yet even here, they avoid the temptation of rapid-fire cutting. Instead, the rhythm alternates between kinetic action and extended stillness. When a character hides or listens for a sound in the dark, the editors allow silence and still frames to dominate. The decision to linger on faces, trembling hands, or a dripping pipe creates unbearable anticipation. This rhythm of expansion and contraction, long takes followed by sharp edits, defines the film's emotional power. The third act is where editing and pacing reach their peak intensity. Once the alien threat fully emerges, the film accelerates, but not at the expense of coherence. The editors skillfully track multiple layers of action, characters running through corridors, the alien's approach, and the countdown of a failing system, through rhythmic cross-cutting that maintains spatial clarity. Even during chaos, the audience never loses track of where characters are or what their immediate goals are. This structural discipline distinguishes the editing from more frantic genre fare. Each cut has purpose, building momentum toward the final confrontation. Scalia and Carballer also show restraint in knowing when not to cut. Some of the most effective moments in the climax are single takes that stretch tension to its breaking point. For example, a sequence in which Rain slowly moves through a flooded compartment is edited with minimal interference. The camera holds as she scans the water's surface, each second adding pressure. When the alien finally surfaces, the impact is doubled because the editing has trained us to expect patience before violence. Despite the overall strength of the editing, a few moments could benefit from slightly tighter rhythm, particularly in the early exploration scenes. Some viewers might find the pacing too deliberate, with tension building more slowly than expected. However, this choice aligns with the film's old-school horror sensibility, prioritizing atmosphere over momentum. By the midpoint, the pacing adjusts naturally as the stakes escalate. The editors clearly trust the material and the audience's patience, which pays off in cumulative suspense. The film's transitions are fluid and invisible, often using match cuts, light flickers, or camera movement to bridge scenes. This invisible editing style ensures that the viewer remains immersed without distraction. It's the kind of craftsmanship where cuts go unnoticed but their effects are deeply felt. The rhythm of Alien Romulus 2024 reflects both technical discipline and narrative intuition. It builds a steady climb of tension rather than a roller coaster of spikes. The editing treats silence, duration, and space as tools equal to action and dialogue. In the end, Scalia and Carballer's work defines the heartbeat of the film, slow and steady at first, then tightening into a pulse that never lets go. Their choices make Alien Romulus not just a horror experience but a lesson in how control of time can generate fear more effectively than any monster on screen. The soundtrack and score of Alien Romulus 2024 are essential to the film's emotional and atmospheric power, transforming sound into an invisible character that shapes every moment of tension, dread, and revelation. Composed by Benjamin Wallfisch, the score functions not only as background accompaniment but as an active storyteller. Wallfisch's music continues the legacy of Jerry Goldsmith's haunting work from the original Alien while evolving it into something new, colder, more psychological, and deeply textured. His compositions blur the line between music and sound design, merging ambient noises, mechanical drones, and human breath into an immersive auditory experience that amplifies the terror. From the opening moments, the score establishes tone with restraint. The first notes are not melodic but atmospheric, a low, pulsating hum layered beneath distant metallic echoes. These sounds mirror the industrial heartbeat of the derelict station and set up a sense of unease before a single image appears. Wallfisch builds the opening cue around dissonant strings and electronic frequencies that evoke the emptiness of space. The effect is unsettling rather than dramatic, guiding the viewer into a world defined by uncertainty. Silence becomes just as important as sound. When the music drops out entirely, the absence feels deafening. This balance between noise and quiet defines the rhythm of the film's tension. One of Wallfisch's most effective techniques is the use of recurring motifs tied to characters and themes. The protagonist Rain Carradine has a motif built around a fragile, descending piano phrase, barely audible at first, like a memory surfacing through static. It plays during her moments of vulnerability or self-doubt, evolving subtly as her character grows. By the film's final act, the same motif returns, now layered with strings and distorted synths, reflecting how she has transformed from uncertainty to defiance. The alien itself also carries a sonic identity, an atonal metallic rumble that begins almost imperceptibly in the mix and grows louder whenever it draws near. This sound is not a traditional musical cue but a sonic warning, a kind of auditory pheromone that conditions the audience to feel fear before seeing the creature. The interplay between these motifs creates a subconscious dialogue between human fragility and predatory menace. The editing of the score complements the film's pacing perfectly. In slower scenes, the music moves like a distant echo, allowing space for tension to build organically. Wallfisch avoids overscoring, often letting machinery hums or the faint drip of condensation fill the silence instead. When the music does return, it feels like the environment itself is awakening. During moments of terror, he layers strings, percussion, and synthetic bass into rhythmic surges that mimic heartbeats. The closer danger gets, the faster the rhythm becomes, synchronizing the audience's pulse with the characters. One of the standout cues occurs during the first full encounter with the alien. As the crew explores a pitch-black compartment, the score begins with a barely audible resonance, half mechanical, half organic. As the light flickers, a single violin note sustains, bending in pitch until it feels almost unbearable. Then, just as the alien lunges from the shadows, the score drops into complete silence. The sudden absence of sound is more terrifying than any musical hit could be. This use of silence as punctuation demonstrates Wallfisch's mastery of restraint. The soundscape of Alien Romulus relies heavily on blending score with environmental noise. The film's sound design, air vents sighing, machinery grinding, footsteps echoing through metal corridors, often merges seamlessly with the music. Wallfisch works closely with the sound team to blur these boundaries. At times, it's impossible to tell whether a tone is part of the score or part of the ship itself. This ambiguity creates a sense of immersion and unease, as if the environment is alive and watching. In contrast to the dominant ambient and orchestral textures, there are moments where the soundtrack breaks from this pattern with subtle bursts of rhythm. A few cues introduce faint, distorted percussive elements reminiscent of an industrial heartbeat. These moments appear mostly during scenes of mechanical repair or countdown tension, grounding the story in tactile realism. The sound becomes both a reflection of human endurance and a reminder of the machinery that confines them. One notable scene features a haunting variation of the original Alien theme, reinterpreted through Wallfisch's modern lens. He uses fragments of Goldsmith's eerie intervals but deconstructs them into fractured echoes. It's a respectful homage rather than a repetition, suggesting that the spirit of the original film haunts this one without dominating it. This moment bridges nostalgia and innovation, rewarding longtime fans while staying true to Alvarez's darker tone. The film rarely uses licensed music, and this decision strengthens its immersive atmosphere. When a non-original track finally appears, a faint recording playing from an old radio in one scene, it feels startling and deeply human. The song, a vintage ballad barely audible through static, becomes a temporary relief from tension. For a brief moment, we're reminded that these characters once belonged to a world beyond fear. Wallfish allows the song to fade gradually into silence, swallowed by the hum of the station, symbolizing how fragile hope becomes in such isolation. The restraint in musical choices ensures that when the score swells, it matters. The climactic confrontation uses one of the most powerful musical cues in the film. The score begins with slow, heavy percussion and distorted brass, growing denser as Rain faces the alien. Yet even in its loudest moments, the music remains controlled. Wallfish never lets it overpower the action. Instead, he sculpts the sound around breathing, movement, and mechanical crashes, so that the music enhances rather than dominates emotion. The final moments of the film deliver a haunting conclusion through sound. As the surviving character drifts through space, Wallfish returns to the original piano motif, now reduced to single, trembling notes. Beneath it, a faint hum builds, like the ship system still alive, or the alien's presence lingering. The score fades into silence before the credits roll, leaving the audience in suspended uncertainty. That unresolved tone captures the film's essence. The horror never truly ends, it just recedes into the dark. Throughout Alien Romulus 2024, music is not a decorative addition but a living pulse that mirrors fear, isolation, and resilience. Wallfish's score succeeds because it understands that horror is as much about what we hear as what we see. Through recurring motifs, careful restraint, and moments of profound silence, the soundtrack becomes the film's emotional core, a soundscape of tension and release that lingers long after the final frame fades to black. Alien Romulus 2024 operates as far more than a simple survival horror film. Beneath its surface of claustrophobic terror and science fiction spectacle lies a network of themes that explore identity, control, human fragility, and the recurring cycle of fear that defines our relationship with the unknown. Fede Álvarez and co-writer Rodo Sayegh have constructed a story that examines not only the monstrous alien threat, but also the internal and societal mechanisms that create monsters of our own making. At its thematic core, Alien Romulus is about the tension between creation and survival, about humanity's relentless need to conquer, manipulate, and play God, even when those pursuits lead to destruction. The film's young protagonists are scavengers searching for purpose and independence in a universe controlled by corporate and military forces. Their discovery of the derelict space station represents both curiosity and hubris, the same impulse that drove the scientists of earlier films to experiment with xenomorph biology. In that sense, Alien Romulus revisits one of the franchise's defining questions. What happens when humanity's desire to evolve collides with the primal laws of nature? The central theme of identity is expressed through Rain Carradine, the film's protagonist. Her journey mirrors the broader thematic struggle between human individuality and systemic control. Rain begins as a follower, defined by her need to belong within her crew and haunted by her lineage. Her name alone carries echoes of the franchise's legacy, subtly tying her to the mythos of Ripley without overtly repeating it. As the story progresses, she confronts the question of who she is when everything familiar is stripped away. Her evolution from uncertain explorer to survivor represents self-definition through adversity. The alien itself serves as a mirror to Rain's transformation. It is the embodiment of pure instinct, stripped of morality or purpose beyond survival. By contrasting Rain's growing humanity with the alien's biological perfection, the film suggests that identity is forged not by power but by choice. Fear becomes the crucible in which individuality is tested. Another major theme is control. Who wields it, who loses it, and what happens when systems collapse. The space station in Alien Romulus functions as a symbol of failed order. Every panel, door, and blinking light represents human attempts to organize chaos, yet beneath that order lurks the uncontrollable alien presence. This visual metaphor recurs throughout the film. Sterile technology gives way to organic horror, and metal corridors are overtaken by dripping alien architecture. Through this imagery, the film communicates that human control is always temporary, an illusion easily shattered by forces we cannot contain. The corporate undertones familiar to the Alien series also return in subtler form. The crew's mission, while personal on the surface, is driven by larger unseen powers that view human life as expendable. Alien Romulus critiques this exploitation without heavy exposition, allowing the imagery of abandoned experiments and corporate insignias to speak for themselves. The message is consistent with the series' legacy. Our institutions are willing to gamble with human life in the pursuit of profit or scientific discovery. However, Alvarez modernizes this theme by framing it through younger, disenfranchised characters, showing how generational cycles of exploitation persist even at the edges of space. Fear, both personal and collective, underpins every thematic layer of Alien Romulus. The film doesn't just portray fear as reactionary, it treats it as a shaping force. Characters make decisions not because they are brave or rational, but because fear compels them. The alien feeds on this emotional energy, becoming less a predator and more a reflection of human panic. In one key sequence, as the survivors turn on one another, Alvarez visually blurs the aliens' movements with human silhouettes, symbolizing how paranoia transforms people into the very monsters they dread. Through these moments, the film asks whether survival is worth the moral decay it requires. Redemption also figures prominently, particularly through Rain's arc. Her motivation to prove herself and escape her past failures mirrors humanity's broader desire to correct its mistakes. When she finally faces the alien, the confrontation feels symbolic, a reckoning not just between woman and creature, but between guilt and acceptance. Rain's final act of defiance, performed in silence, embodies the theme that redemption does not come through victory but through self-realization. The film uses repetition and mirroring to strengthen its thematic messaging. The cyclical structure, beginning with discovery and ending with isolation, reflects the endless loop of human curiosity and its consequences. Even as Rain survives, the implication is clear. Others will return, the cycle will continue, and the lessons of the past will once again be ignored. This fatalistic tone connects Alien Romulus to the existential horror roots of the franchise, where progress and destruction are inseparable. Visually, the film communicates its themes through contrast. Cold, mechanical environments clash with the organic, pulsating texture of the alien hive. This juxtaposition of man-made order and biological chaos mirrors the philosophical divide between logic and instinct. In several key shots, human faces are half-lit by sterile light and half-swallowed by darkness, reinforcing the idea that civilization and savagery coexist within the same frame. The cinematography and production design align perfectly with these themes, using the environment as a reflection of psychological states. Silence, as much as dialogue, carries the film's thematic weight. The absence of sound during critical moments of fear or decision-making suggests the limits of language in the face of the unknown. Where dialogue might explain, silence invites interpretation. In one haunting scene, Rain gazes at the stars through a cracked viewport as faint breathing echoes in the background, a reminder that even in vastness, something is always watching. This quiet existentialism underscores the film's deeper message, that humanity's search for meaning often leads it directly into confrontation with its own insignificance. Love and connection appear fleetingly but meaningfully in Alien Romulus. Bonds between crew members, especially moments of sacrifice, hint at the idea that compassion persists even in hopelessness. When characters choose to protect rather than abandon one another, the film argues for a version of humanity that survives not through strength but empathy. Yet these moments are rare and fragile, swallowed quickly by the surrounding darkness. This fragility of emotion against a backdrop of cosmic indifference gives the film its melancholy edge. In the end, Alien Romulus 2024 delivers a layered meditation on creation, control, and fear. It suggests that humanity's greatest strength, its desire to explore and understand, is inseparable from its greatest weakness, its inability to stop. Through image, rhythm, and silence, the film communicates that survival is not victory but endurance, that knowledge brings both enlightenment and doom, and that the true alien presence may not be the creature at all, but the part of humanity that refuses to learn from what it destroys. Alien Romulus 2024 demonstrates how far visual effects have evolved within the Alien franchise while still paying tribute to the tactile horror that made Ridley Scott's original 1979 film timeless. Under Fede Álvarez's direction, the movie balances digital artistry with practical craftsmanship, creating a world that feels both grounded and otherworldly. The film's visual effects are not just technical showpieces but integral to its storytelling rhythm and atmosphere, shaping the audience's emotional experience rather than overwhelming it. The VFX work in Alien Romulus operates under a philosophy of restraint. Alvarez and his team deliberately avoided the glossy overproduction seen in many modern sci-fi films. Instead, they adopted a hybrid approach, combining advanced CGI for scale and movement with practical effects for texture and realism. This fusion ensures that even the most impossible moments maintain a sense of physicality. Every glistening droplet of Xenomorph saliva, every ripple in the creature's biomechanical hide, feels tangible because it often begins with a practical sculpt enhanced digitally. One of the film's triumphs is how invisible much of its CGI truly is. The derelict space station Romulus, which serves as the primary setting, was constructed using a blend of physical sets and digital extensions. The crew worked on detailed interior builds, complete with narrow corridors, dripping condensation, and rusted panels that evoke the original Nostromo aesthetic. CGI expands these spaces into vast chambers and alien nests, maintaining seamless continuity between the tactile and the virtual. The lighting design reinforces this unity. Digital and practical elements share the same grime, the same low-contrast illumination, which helps the audience forget where reality ends and effects begin. The alien itself is where the film's effects team achieves something remarkable. Using a mixture of animatronics, motion capture, and digital augmentation, the creature feels alive in ways that pure CGI rarely achieves. Its movement retains a sense of weight and unpredictability, echoing the unsettling rhythms of earlier Alien entries while introducing new agility and menace. Close-up shots often employ practical puppetry to capture the glistening intricacies of the creature's face, while full-body sequences rely on digital animation for fluid motion. The transitions between the two are imperceptible. One standout sequence involves the alien emerging from a flooded maintenance shaft. Water simulations blend seamlessly with physical splashes captured on set, and as the creature breaks the surface, droplets and reflections interact perfectly with its body. This scene exemplifies how the film's visual effects serve tension rather than spectacle. The viewer's awe comes from dread, not admiration for the technology. Another notable visual feat appears during zero-gravity scenes, where the crew navigates through drifting debris and flickering holographic displays. Here, VFX compositing sells the illusion of weightlessness without calling attention to itself. Subtle details, such as floating dust and vapor trails illuminated by flashlight beams, give these moments an eerie beauty. The realism of these digital layers helps maintain immersion even as the situation grows increasingly surreal. While Alien Romulus leans heavily on digital environments in certain sequences, particularly when the characters uncover the alien hive, the CGI remains grounded through careful design choices. The hive's pulsating walls and organic patterns were first built practically on a smaller scale, then scanned and digitally replicated to fill the massive chamber. This hybrid method avoids the overly smooth or plastic texture that often plagues digital creations. Instead, the hive looks damp, diseased, and alive, almost as if the ship itself is decaying into something biological. The VFX team also uses CGI to extend visual storytelling beyond what is possible with sets or miniatures. Holographic projections, decaying planetary backdrops, and orbital debris fields are rendered with extraordinary realism. These visuals serve narrative purpose, reminding us of the isolation and decay of this forgotten corner of space. The sense of vast emptiness contrasts sharply with the suffocating interiors of Romulus, heightening the film's duality of scale. Infinite cosmos outside, claustrophobic terror within. The motion capture performances deserve special recognition. The alien's fluidity, particularly in its stalking sequences, benefits from a performer embodying the creature's physical logic before digital artists layered in secondary movement and texturing. The result avoids the mechanical stiffness often associated with computer animation. Instead, each motion carries intent, calculated, organic, and terrifyingly graceful. Even when the creature appears fully digital, it moves with a predatory intelligence that feels grounded in reality. Visual effects also play a critical role in conveying violence and transformation. Birth scenes, chest bursts, and parasitic infections are executed with disturbing authenticity. Rather than relying entirely on CGI gore, the filmmakers often start with prosthetic rigs, adding digital enhancements to smooth transitions or amplify motion. The result is an unsettling realism that honors the series' tradition of practical horror while embracing modern refinement. These effects amplify rather than distract, making the horror more tactile and immediate. There are a few moments, however, where the CGI slightly overreaches. Wide shots of the alien leaping through collapsing corridors, while impressive, verge on digital fluidity that momentarily breaks the illusion. Yet these instances are brief and forgivable within the broader visual context. The film's commitment to blending physical and digital elements ensures that even the most spectacular effects retain emotional credibility. The technical compositing work throughout Alien Romulus deserves particular praise. The integration of actors with digital backgrounds is executed with precision. Reflections, dust particles, and lens flares are all accounted for in real-time simulations. These micro details make even heavily digital scenes feel lived in. For instance, When the crew activates the derelict ship's ancient power core, glowing energy fields and holographic displays interact believably with the performer's skin and environment, grounding the sci-fi spectacle in a tangible world. One of the most effective uses of VFX in the film is its restraint in showing the alien. Shadows, smoke, and flickering lights obscure full visibility, allowing the creature to exist partly in imagination. The digital team used minimal rendering in several shots, letting lighting and suggestion carry fear. This decision underscores the director's understanding that mystery and anticipation are the most powerful visual effects of all. The final act pushes the visual envelope with explosions, decompression effects, and large-scale destruction, but even here, chaos is controlled. The explosions are rendered with realistic physics, and debris interacts with actors convincingly. The finale feels operatic yet grounded, maintaining tension without dissolving into digital excess. Ultimately, the visual effects of Alien Romulus 2024 succeed because they serve the story's emotional core rather than overshadow it. They extend the film's realism, amplify its terror, and deepen its atmosphere. Every digital frame feels connected to a physical world, every effect motivated by narrative purpose. The set design and locations in Alien Romulus 2024 play a crucial role in immersing the audience within its dark, industrial, and decaying sci-fi universe. Under the guidance of production designer Nauman Marshall, the film builds a world that feels both futuristic and familiar, echoing the gritty realism that defined Ridley Scott's 1979 Alien while introducing a new layer of environmental storytelling. Every corridor, chamber, and prop is designed not just for visual impact but to serve narrative function, creating a space where technology, decay, and fear coexist seamlessly. The film's primary setting, the derelict space station Romulus, immediately captures the claustrophobic essence of the Alien franchise. Built as a hybrid of practical sets and digital extensions, the Romulus feels lived in and mechanically functional. Its labyrinth of corridors, dimly lit engineering decks, and creaking bulkheads transport the audience into a place that feels like a relic of failed ambition. The production team used real industrial materials, steel grating, corroded pipes, dripping condensation, to create textures that reflect the wear and tear of decades of abandonment. This tactile realism grounds the horror in physical space, allowing actors to interact with their environment in authentic ways. The ship's interior was divided into two main modules, Romulus and Remus, representing dual aspects of the narrative, human exploration and alien contamination. Romulus serves as the crew's initial point of entry, a space that still shows traces of human design, albeit eroded by time and neglect. The control rooms are cluttered with analog monitors, flickering CRT screens, and labeled switches, evoking the retro tech aesthetic that the series is known for. The Remus module, by contrast, becomes a manifestation of corruption. As the story progresses, organic alien matter slowly consumes its metallic structure. The walls take on a biomechanical quality, pulsing with a faint, unnatural rhythm. This gradual visual transformation acts as a physical metaphor for the story's central theme, human technology merging disastrously with alien biology. The design team achieved this effect through layered set dressing, mixing silicon molds, foam growths, and wet paint textures to simulate living tissue overtaking metal. Beyond the ship, the film opens on the mining colony at Jackson Star, a location that establishes the socio-economic and emotional backdrop of the characters. Shot on location in real industrial complexes in Budapest, Hungary, these exteriors feature wide, desaturated shots filled with mechanical noise and pollution. Conveyor belts, exhaust stacks, and vast machinery dominate the frame, emphasizing humanity's dependence on technology and labor. This setting is crucial in shaping Rain Carradine's motivation to escape, a place where survival outweighs dreams. The choice to use real factories and mining infrastructure gives the colony a grounded sense of authenticity that CGI could not replicate. Each prop and environmental detail tells part of the story. Helmets scuffed from repeated use, oxygen tanks with corporate logos, and peeling signage in Weyland-Yutani branding subtly communicate the oppressive control of the corporation over every aspect of life. Even the personal quarters of the crew reflect individuality within conformity. Hand-drawn stickers, small tokens, and makeshift repairs hint at the human attempt to maintain identity in a dehumanizing world. These small touches enrich the film's emotional texture, allowing viewers to sense the characters' histories without relying on exposition. One of the most impressive set pieces in Alien Romulus is the cryo lab where the facehugger is first discovered. Designed as a blend of sterile medical precision and decayed industrial ruin, the room balances beauty and dread. The cold white lighting reflects off cracked glass and corroded metal, evoking a once advanced facility now reduced to a tomb. The props within, floating specimen jars, datapads flickering with corrupted logs, and restraint chairs, tell the story of scientific ambition turned catastrophic. This environment not only builds tension but also supports thematic resonance, highlighting humanity's dangerous curiosity. The airlock chamber serves as another standout environment, functioning as both a narrative and visual focal point. Its circular symmetry, layered steel textures, and alternating red and blue lighting heighten the sense of entrapment. When characters confront the alien in this space, the design amplifies emotional intensity. The narrow passageways force proximity, while the harsh lighting exposes fear in every expression. It's a masterclass in how set design can drive psychological tension. Even the smallest props carry symbolic weight. Andy, the android, often interacts with tactile controls and maintenance tools designed with functional realism. His workbench, cluttered with half-dismantled tech and old data chips, visually represents his internal conflict between programmed precision and human curiosity. Meanwhile, the alien hive set, located deep within the Remus module, showcases the film's most visually disturbing design. Constructed using layered foam structures, organic tendrils, and liquid resin, it blurs the line between architecture and anatomy. The hive walls appear to breathe under low light, creating an unsettling sense of life within the environment itself. These sets are not simply backdrops, they become characters, evolving as the narrative progresses. Alvarez's directorial style relies heavily on practical spatial awareness, meaning the sets are built to full scale wherever possible. This allows long takes and dynamic camera movement that enhance immersion. The production design team intentionally included small flaws, flickering lights, leaking vents, uneven flooring, to make the environments feel unpredictable and alive. When the alien attacks, the collapsing infrastructure reacts in real time, adding physical stakes to digital terror. The film also uses contrasting environments to reinforce tone. The sterile laboratories contrast with the grimy maintenance tunnels, the vast docking bay with its oppressive emptiness, and the claustrophobic ventilation shafts where survival depends on silence. Each location mirrors the psychological state of the characters. Curiosity gives way to panic, hope dissolves into confinement. These visual metaphors allow the set design to function as an extension of storytelling rather than a simple aesthetic layer. Alien Romulus also benefits from subtle environmental storytelling outside the main ship. The few planetary exterior shots show the remains of a failed outpost, captured with practical miniature models enhanced by VFX. Wind-swept dunes, skeletal communication towers, and rusted cargo units create a haunting visual poetry that reflects humanity's insignificance in the vast universe. The sound design of these locations, distant echoes, metallic creaks, and low mechanical hums, interacts closely with the physical set to create a fully immersive sensory experience. Ultimately, the production design of Alien Romulus 2024 succeeds because it trusts the physical world to do the storytelling. Every location, from the colony's oppressive industrial landscape to the haunting interior of the Romulus station, is meticulously crafted to evoke mood, meaning, and realism. The design is not decorative but narrative-driven, enhancing character emotion, reinforcing thematic tension, and grounding the science fiction in physical authenticity. The dialogue and script of Alien Romulus 2024 reflect a balance between modern cinematic pacing and the minimalist restraint that made the early Alien films so effective. Written by Fede Álvarez and Rodo Sayers, the screenplay prioritizes atmosphere, subtext, and tension over exposition. Rather than relying on extended monologues or heavy scientific jargon, the dialogue is sharp, deliberate, and purposefully economical. Each line serves to reveal character, deepen theme, or build unease. The writing understands that silence can often communicate more terror than words ever could. From the opening sequence on the mining colony, the script establishes its tone through conversational realism. The workers' exchanges are curt and functional, loaded with exhaustion and resignation. Rain Carradine's early dialogue shows her restless determination without needing explicit statements of motivation. When she jokes bitterly about digging holes in someone else's empire, it captures both her wit and her trapped circumstances. Tyler's protective banter with his sister Kay adds warmth to the group dynamic while underscoring the family ties that later become emotional leverage. The dialogue here is grounded in working-class language, helping the audience connect with the characters as real people before the horror begins. As the crew travels toward the derelict station, the script gradually shifts tone. Conversations grow sparse, allowing tension to fill the silence. The banter fades, replaced by fragments of unease, short, clipped exchanges that mirror the crew's rising fear. When they first discuss boarding the abandoned facility, their dialogue serves dual purposes, advancing the plot and foreshadowing danger. Tyler's line, "It's just metal and air, nothing alive out there," works as both reassurance and dramatic irony, as the audience already suspects otherwise. Alvarez and Sayeg's use this kind of layered phrasing throughout, letting simple statements carry deeper meaning on rewatch. Inside the station, the dialogue becomes more minimal, serving as punctuation between long stretches of atmospheric silence. This restraint mirrors Ridley Scott's original Alien, where quiet moments heighten dread. The script trusts the environment, camera, and performances to fill emotional gaps. When the crew first discovers the containment pods, their hesitant questions and fragmented observations. "What's that fluid?" "Looks recent." "Don't touch it." Build unease precisely because no one explains what's happening. The uncertainty in their speech reflects the film's core tension, humanity's fear of the unknown. Character differentiation through dialogue is one of the script's strengths. Rain's lines are quick and assertive, revealing a natural leader who speaks less from authority than from instinct. Tyler's language is practical and defensive, while Kay's dialogue softens with empathy, offering a counterpoint to the film's mechanical world. Andy, the android, delivers his lines with measured precision. His speech patterns, slightly too formal, lacking contractions, subtly remind the audience that he operates just outside human emotional rhythm. Yet as the film progresses, his dialogue becomes more human, especially in his final scenes. When he tells Rain, "I choose you," the simplicity of the line lands with emotional weight because it reflects his evolution beyond programming. The script also uses repetition to create thematic echoes. Words like freedom, breath, and home recur throughout, shifting meaning as the story unfolds. Early on, they represent hope. By the climax, they symbolize loss and survival. This linguistic rhythm gives the screenplay poetic structure beneath its gritty realism. Silence, too, is written as part of the script. Several key moments, such as the aftermath of the first death, or Rain's silent gaze into the ship's reactor core, are designed with minimal dialogue, allowing the visual and musical language to speak instead. These pauses are crucial for pacing, giving the audience space to process emotion before the next surge of terror. The film's exposition is handled with restraint. Instead of dumping backstory through dialogue, information emerges naturally through argument, discovery, and conflict. For instance, the crew learns about Weyland-Yutani's abandoned experiments not through an info dump but through fragmented data logs and offhand remarks. When Kay says, "They were making something that thinks faster than we do," it's both revelation and dread, delivered without melodrama. This approach keeps the audience active, piecing together the mystery along with the characters. That said, not all dialogue moments achieve the same finesse. A few lines lean into genre cliché, especially during moments of panic or exposition. Exchanges like, "We have to blow the whole thing," or "It's right behind us," echo familiar beats from earlier franchise entries. However, these moments are brief and often redeemed by the actor's grounded delivery. The script's real strength lies in the quieter conversations that explore moral ambiguity. In one late scene, Rain accuses Andy of betraying them, and his calm reply, "I followed the program that told me to protect life," turns a simple exchange into a meditation on ethics and artificial intelligence. Subtext operates throughout the screenplay, particularly in discussions of motherhood and creation. Kay's pregnancy subplot carries layers of metaphorical meaning, and her dialogue often foreshadows the horror to come. When she says early on, "Sometimes it feels like something's growing faster than me," it plays as a natural maternal comment but gains chilling resonance once her infection is revealed. This use of dual-meaning dialogue demonstrates how the script integrates theme into character voice without forcing it. The writing also shows skillful control of rhythm. Sentences shorten as danger increases, mirroring elevated heart rates and panic. The climactic exchange between Rain and Andy, intercut with chaos around them, feels almost musical in pacing. Quick bursts of dialogue punctuate silence, creating a rhythm that mirrors breath itself. This precision editing of speech aligns perfectly with the film's physical tension, showing how dialogue can act as another layer of cinematic rhythm. Where the screenplay excels most is in its emotional restraint. It avoids melodramatic speeches or overt moralizing, instead letting implication and tone carry meaning. When Rain finally escapes in the shuttle, her single whispered word, "home," delivers more impact than any monologue could. The silence that follows reinforces the film's bleak worldview. Survival may not equal freedom. If there is one area where the script could be tighter, it's an occasional redundancy. Some lines in the middle act repeat information the audience already infers visually. A more confident trust in visual storytelling would have further strengthened pacing. Still, these moments are minor compared to the overall effectiveness of the screenplay's voice. In the end, the dialogue and script of Alien Romulus 2024 succeed because they remember what made the original films enduring: economy, realism, and atmosphere. The words feel lived in, the silences feel heavy, and every exchange pushes the story forward. The writing captures the claustrophobic poetry of survival in space, a world where a whisper can mean life, and a single unspoken truth can be the loudest sound in the room. Alien Romulus 2024 stands as a confident return to the sci-fi horror roots that define the Alien franchise, while also weaving in elements of action and character drama to modernize its tone. Directed by Fede Álvarez, the film embraces the DNA of the original Alien and Aliens without simply imitating them. It honors the genre's foundational rules: claustrophobia, dread, and survival, yet injects enough modern intensity and emotional grounding to make it feel fresh for contemporary audiences. The result is a hybrid experience that merges slow-burn horror with bursts of visceral action and psychological depth. At its core, Alien Romulus is a horror film, but it avoids cheap jump scares in favor of mounting tension and environmental unease. The film's first act establishes this through atmosphere rather than spectacle. Long takes, ambient sound design, and the eerie emptiness of the abandoned station set the tone. Alvarez understands that true horror in this franchise isn't just about the creature. It's about isolation, confinement, and the breakdown of human order in the face of the unknown. When the first death occurs, it's not presented as a sudden shock but as a chilling inevitability. This slow tightening of dread echoes Ridley Scott's original pacing from 1979, where anticipation is more terrifying than action itself. The film also functions as a survival thriller, with the middle section blending horror with kinetic energy. The genre balance here recalls James Cameron's Aliens, though Alvarez resists turning it into a pure action spectacle. Firefights and escapes are quick, desperate, and chaotic, emphasizing fear over heroism. The editing and direction keep these sequences grounded. Guns jam, flashlights fail, and characters make human mistakes under pressure. The genre execution feels authentic because it respects vulnerability rather than invincibility. This commitment to realism keeps the audience emotionally connected to the characters rather than detached observers of action choreography. Alien Romulus also taps into psychological horror, particularly through themes of motherhood, creation, and body violation. These motifs run deep in the alien mythology, but the new film reinterprets them through Kay's pregnancy subplot and Andy's evolving consciousness. The horror of transformation, the idea that something alien can gestate within something human, returns as the film's emotional and symbolic core. This use of genre as metaphor elevates the movie beyond mere creature feature territory. Like the best entries in the series, the terror operates on both a visceral and philosophical level. One of the strongest aspects of the film's genre execution is its restraint in revealing the alien itself. Rather than overexposing the creature with constant CGI, Alvarez uses darkness, silhouette, and suggestion to keep the monster mysterious. The creature's presence is felt before it's fully seen, and when it finally emerges, the payoff is earned. This approach recalls the classic rule of horror: what's imagined is always worse than what's shown. By withholding the full visual of the alien until late in the film, the director honors the original's approach to suspense while still delivering a modern level of intensity. Where Alien Romulus innovates within the genre is through its blending of emotional intimacy with large-scale tension. Rain Carradine's journey isn't just about physical survival but existential struggle. Her search for autonomy in a world controlled by corporate forces mirrors the larger horror of human exploitation. This thematic layering aligns the film more closely with elevated horror trends of recent years, where fear arises as much from psychological realism as from physical threat. Scenes between Rain and Andy, in particular, blur the boundary between horror and drama. Their evolving relationship, one human, one artificial, introduces an emotional anchor that most sci-fi horror films lack. The film also revisits and redefines familiar tropes. The final girl archetype, a staple of horror cinema, is approached with subtlety. Rain's survival isn't framed as triumph, but as endurance. She doesn't conquer the alien through brute strength or divine luck, but through intelligence, empathy, and sheer will. This choice feels more in line with contemporary audience expectations for grounded realism than with the power fantasies that dominate modern blockbusters. Meanwhile, the android archetype, long central to the Alien series, gains new emotional dimension. Andy isn't the cold manipulator of past installments, but a morally conflicted being seeking identity. This shift refreshes the trope and adds new philosophical weight to the film's genre foundation. Visually and tonally, Alien Romulus draws heavily from classic sci-fi horror aesthetics. The use of industrial set design, analog technology, and confined lighting schemes evokes a retro future reminiscent of 1980s genre films. Yet the cinematography and sound mixing bring modern polish, creating a bridge between nostalgia and contemporary expectations. Fans of the series will recognize the signature tension, the blend of sterile corporate environments and creeping biological horror, while newcomers will find a self-contained story that doesn't rely on deep franchise knowledge. Despite its many strengths, the film occasionally leans too heavily on franchise familiarity. Certain beats, such as the discovery of the facehugger or the self-destruct climax, feel predictable to longtime fans. However, these familiar moments function more as homage than laziness. Alvarez's direction reframes them with new emotional context, ensuring that even repeated genre beats carry fresh meaning. The predictable elements are offset by the film's emotional depth and visual execution. What truly distinguishes Alien Romulus from many recent sci-fi horror efforts is its discipline. It doesn't chase spectacle or over-explain its mythology. The pacing is methodical, the tone consistent, and the emotional stakes human. The film remembers that fear depends on empathy. Without believable characters, no creature can scare us. This is where Alvarez proves his mastery of genre. He uses horror not just to thrill but to reveal what people become when trapped between survival and extinction. In genre terms, Alien Romulus succeeds because it respects the past while daring to evolve. It honors horror conventions through atmosphere, character-driven suspense, and moral ambiguity. It delivers action that feels earned, not excessive. It embeds drama within its terror, allowing moments of tenderness to coexist with scenes of destruction. And most importantly, it avoids turning the franchise into self-parody, preserving the dread and philosophical weight that made Alien endure for decades. For American audiences accustomed to high-velocity sci-fi thrillers, Alien Romulus offers something more nuanced, a return to intelligent horror that trusts tension, character, and silence over spectacle. It proves that genre mastery lies not in reinvention for its own sake, but in reawakening what made the genre powerful to begin with. Alien Romulus 2024, while framed as a sci-fi horror story, carries deep social and cultural undercurrents that reflect anxieties of the modern world. Beneath its narrative of survival and alien terror lies a meditation on class divide, corporate exploitation, technological overreach, and the question of human identity in an age defined by control and artificial intelligence. The film, directed by Fede Álvarez, uses the alien universe not only to frighten but to mirror contemporary fears that extend far beyond the stars. What makes its commentary effective is how it embeds social meaning in visual storytelling and character dynamics rather than overt dialogue. At its core, Alien Romulus critiques the persistence of corporate dominance over human life. Weyland-Yutani, the omnipresent company that has haunted the franchise since its beginning, once again symbolizes unchecked capitalism. The film portrays a world where human value is measured by productivity and expendability. The crew's mission, scavenging old colonial tech for scraps of profit, echoes modern labor exploitation, where individuals risk everything for minimal reward under corporate deception. The story's driving force isn't curiosity or exploration but desperation, and that economic reality grounds the science fiction in recognizable human suffering. Alvarez sharpens this critique by showing that the alien threat is secondary to human greed. The creature becomes the punishment for humanity's arrogance and moral decay. In cultural terms, Alien Romulus resonates with growing societal distrust toward corporations and technology. The film's depiction of artificial intelligence through Andy, the android companion, reflects today's ambivalence toward AI. Andy is built to serve, yet his growing awareness raises questions about autonomy, empathy, and the ethics of creation. The tension between Andy's programming and his emerging consciousness mirrors real-world debates about how technology reflects the biases and ambitions of its creators. When Andy begins to act outside his intended purpose, the film invites viewers to consider whether true intelligence, artificial or human, can ever thrive within systems built on control. This thematic line connects directly to discussions in American culture about automation, surveillance, and the erosion of individuality in a data-driven age. Gender politics also remain a subtle but powerful current in Alien Romulus. Like the original Alien films, it features a strong female protagonist, Rain Carradine, whose journey blends resilience, fear, and moral complexity. However, her strength doesn't come from conforming to masculine archetypes of action, but from emotional intelligence and empathy. This portrayal of leadership challenges traditional gender roles within the sci-fi and horror genres. Rain's relationship with Andy and her confrontation with the alien both symbolize motherhood distorted, creation turned violent, and survival entwined with sacrifice. The imagery surrounding gestation, birth, and body horror reflects ongoing conversations about reproductive autonomy, control over one's body, and the societal pressures placed upon women. These layers are subtle but deeply felt, continuing the Alien series tradition of using horror to explore female agency and bodily violation. The social commentary also extends to class and isolation. The working-class roots of the franchise return here, where the characters are not soldiers or scientists, but scavengers struggling to survive on the edges of civilization. Their mission is not exploration but salvage, a desperate act of survival in a collapsing economy. This reflects the widening gap between privilege and precarity in the modern world. The decaying space station setting, filled with remnants of past experiments and corporate negligence, serves as a visual metaphor for a system that exploits its workers and then abandons them. The crew's expendability underscores the film's critique of late-stage capitalism, where profit always outweighs human cost. Alien Romulus also engages with the cultural conversation around environmental destruction and humanity's relationship with nature. The alien organism, as in previous films, is a form of biological retribution, a creation born from human interference with natural order. Its invasive and adaptive nature symbolizes how human greed has unleashed forces beyond control. The visual of the alien emerging from industrial waste and sterile machinery feels like a commentary on the contamination of life by corporate ambition. This theme echoes environmental fears in the United States, where climate change, resource exploitation, and ecological collapse dominate public discourse. The alien becomes not just a monster but a manifestation of the consequences of human hubris. The film's political subtext is equally compelling. Its depiction of a corporation manipulating lower-class workers into deadly missions parallels modern concerns about systemic inequality and the commodification of human labor. The Weyland-Yutani Corporation acts like a dystopian stand-in for real-world institutions that value profit over people. This dynamic reflects the growing cultural fatigue with capitalist systems that prioritize advancement at any cost. The film doesn't preach these ideas openly, but through tone and structure, it communicates a cynical yet realistic worldview. Even in the far reaches of space, hierarchy persists, and those at the bottom pay the price. One of the more nuanced social messages in Alien Romulus is its treatment of fear itself as a tool of control. The characters' isolation and mistrust echo the fragmentation of modern society, how fear divides communities, erodes cooperation, and fuels paranoia. The alien functions as both literal predator and psychological metaphor, representing how oppression thrives when people turn on one another instead of challenging the systems that created their peril. In this sense, the horror becomes political. Survival requires solidarity, yet the corporation ensures division. This subtext feels particularly relevant to American audiences navigating a climate of polarization and institutional distrust. However, the film's social commentary isn't flawless. Some critics argue that while it raises compelling issues, it stops short of fully developing them. For example, the AI subplot introduces thought-provoking questions about consciousness but doesn't push them to philosophical depth. Similarly, the critique of corporate exploitation, though strong, risks repetition for longtime fans of the franchise. Still, these elements work effectively as subtext rather than message-driven exposition. Ultimately, Alien Romulus succeeds in fusing social reflection with genre entertainment. It never sacrifices thrills for ideology but uses fear as a mirror to examine real-world anxieties. Its portrayal of class struggle, technological ethics, and bodily autonomy speaks to an America grappling with uncertainty about its own future. The alien, in this reading, becomes more than a monster. It's the consequence of human ambition unchecked, a symbol of what happens when creation outpaces conscience. By grounding cosmic horror in cultural reality, Alien Romulus 2024 transforms science fiction into social reflection, reminding viewers that the most terrifying monsters are the ones we create ourselves. Alien Romulus 2024 connects deeply with audiences because it balances intense horror with emotional storytelling, allowing both longtime fans of the franchise and new viewers to experience tension, empathy, and awe. From its opening sequence to its closing moments, the film is filled with carefully crafted beats designed to shock, move, and spark discussion. The film doesn't just aim for jump scares or spectacle, it builds emotional investment through characters whose fears and decisions feel grounded and real. As a result, Alien Romulus delivers moments that stay with viewers long after the credits roll, inspiring both emotional reactions and analytical debates. One of the earliest audience-engaging scenes is the discovery sequence when Cailee, Spaeny, and her crew first enter the derelict space station orbiting a forgotten colony. The production design and eerie silence immediately draw viewers into a sense of foreboding. The use of dim lighting and the camera's slow glide through the empty corridors create suspense that makes audiences lean forward, waiting for the inevitable shock. When the crew discovers the frozen lab where earlier experiments took place, the horror is not just visual but psychological. The sight of half-developed xenomorph embryos in containment tanks is disturbing and thought-provoking, prompting the audience to question what kind of scientific desperation led to such creation. This moment effectively triggers the first real gasp of the movie, a combination of dread and fascination. Another major audience hook comes from the first alien encounter, staged with masterful pacing and sound design. The creature's reintroduction feels earned rather than predictable. Viewers familiar with the franchise will recognize the careful build-up. Motion sensors ticking, a faint hiss in the distance, and sudden flashes of light revealing movement in the shadows. When the alien finally appears, it's not just the design that shocks, it's the reaction of the crew, who confront not only physical danger but the realization that humanity's mistakes have come back to haunt them. The scene captures pure cinematic terror, one of those moments that audiences will discuss afterward, comparing how it ranks among the franchise's most iconic attacks. Emotional engagement peaks during the middle of the film, particularly through Raine's growing bond with Andy, played by David Johnson, the android companion. Their relationship becomes one of the film's emotional anchors, offering moments of quiet humanity amid chaos. When Andy expresses guilt for not protecting the previous crew, the subtle exchange between him and Raine shows vulnerability in both characters. Viewers often respond strongly to this dynamic because it blurs the line between human and artificial empathy. This emotional connection pays off in the later scenes, especially during Andy's sacrifice, a heartbreaking yet heroic moment that provokes both sadness and admiration. Audiences are likely to discuss this sequence as one of the film's most poignant moments, especially for its blend of tragedy and hope. One of the most debated and rewatched sequences will likely be the airlock deception scene in the final act. As Raine attempts to lure the alien into a trap, the editing and camera angles mislead both her and the audience into thinking the plan is working. The sudden twist, when the creature outsmarts the humans, creates a mix of shock and awe. This clever manipulation of viewer expectation not only delivers a memorable scare but also invites post-viewing discussion about how the alien represents evolution, adaptation, and intelligence beyond what humanity anticipates. It's a moment built for online debate, GIFs, and fan analysis videos, as viewers revisit the scene to catch the details they missed on first watch. Humor in Alien Romulus is used sparingly but effectively, offering moments of relief in between the tension. One standout example occurs early when the crew debates the practicality of returning home with their findings, joking about corporate bureaucracy even as danger looms. The humor feels organic, a coping mechanism that mirrors real-life tension. Viewers often connect to these lighter exchanges because they humanize the characters, making later losses more impactful. These fleeting laughs heighten the film's emotional spectrum and deepen audience engagement by providing contrast to the horror that follows. Visually and thematically, the film's final moments are designed for lingering discussion. The closing image, Raine floating in zero gravity, staring down at a dying planet, serves as both an ending and a question. Did she truly escape, or has humanity doomed itself to repeat the same mistakes elsewhere? This ambiguity fuels fan theories and online discourse. Thematically, it resonates with modern concerns about survival, climate collapse, and human greed, giving audiences more to reflect on than just monsters and space battles. Many viewers will leave the theater replaying this ending in their minds, analyzing its symbolic weight. Rewatchability in Alien Romulus is one of its greatest strengths. The film layers visual and narrative details that reward multiple viewings. Background screens hint at corporate cover-ups, while dialogue fragments foreshadow betrayals and hidden agendas. Fans will likely pause and analyze these subtle inclusions once the film becomes available on streaming platforms. Its meticulous editing allows sharp-eyed viewers to notice different elements each time, reflections in helmets, audio distortions, or environmental clues that enrich the story. Like other strong entries in the Alien franchise, Romulus invites analytical engagement from its audience rather than passive consumption. Online, certain sequences are practically made for sharing. The chestburster evolution scene, executed with horrifying realism, is destined to trend on social media. Likewise, the emotional farewell between Rain and Andy will likely become a viral clip for its raw performance and visual power. The mixture of fear, beauty, and sadness encapsulated in those moments captures exactly why audiences keep returning to the Alien universe. It's not just about surviving terror but finding humanity within it. Alien Romulus ultimately engages audiences by offering not just scares but emotional resonance, narrative puzzles, and visual spectacle. It creates community through shared reactions, gasps in theaters, analysis threads online, and fan theories debated across platforms. By balancing terrifying imagery with psychological and emotional depth, the film sustains interest beyond its runtime. Whether viewers watch for the creature design, character drama, or hidden meanings, Alien Romulus 2024 ensures that every scene offers something worth remembering, rewatching, and discussing. Comparing Alien Romulus 2024 to other films in its genre and to the director's previous work reveals a fascinating balance of homage and innovation. Fede Álvarez enters a franchise with one of the most iconic cinematic legacies in science fiction horror, and his take both honors and challenges that tradition. The Alien universe has always walked the line between creature horror and existential science fiction, and Romulus continues that trajectory with new thematic weight and technical polish. To understand where it stands, it helps to view the film alongside Ridley Scott's Alien, 1979, James Cameron's Aliens, 1986, and more contemporary entries like Prometheus, 2012, and Alien Covenant, 2017, as well as Alvarez's own earlier work such as Don't Breathe, 2016, and Evil Dead, 2013. Ridley Scott's Alien remains the genre-defining standard, establishing the claustrophobic tone, industrial realism, and primal fear that became the franchise's foundation. Alien Romulus shares Scott's focus on atmosphere and slow-building dread rather than relying solely on jump scares. Alvarez clearly takes cues from the original's restraint, using the environment, the derelict space station and abandoned colony, as an active participant in the storytelling. The creeping sense of isolation mirrors what audiences felt watching the Nostromo crew descend into horror. Yet where Scott's approach was minimalist and haunted, Alvarez injects a more visceral urgency, shaped by modern pacing and editing. His version leans slightly more into action, reflecting a hybridization between the first two Alien films, bridging Scott's horror and Cameron's militaristic adrenaline. James Cameron's Aliens transformed the series into a kinetic, battle-driven spectacle, emphasizing teamwork, firepower, and maternal themes. Alien Romulus revisits some of those emotional beats but scales the scope back to personal survival rather than large-scale warfare. The parallels are most visible in Rain Carradine's character arc, which echoes Ellen Ripley's evolution without mimicking it. Like Ripley, Rain's strength grows through trauma, but her leadership comes from empathy rather than command. Alvarez's film strips away the military heroics and focuses on psychological endurance. This makes Romulus feel more intimate and character-driven than Cameron's bombastic sequel, while still honoring its emotional intensity. When placed beside Prometheus and Alien Covenant, both directed by Ridley Scott decades later, Alien Romulus feels like a tonal correction. Prometheus and Covenant expanded the mythology, exploring creation, AI, and divinity but often lost the horror essence that defined the franchise. Alvarez brings that horror back to the forefront. His film doesn't abandon philosophical depth. It explores corporate exploitation and artificial intelligence, but it does so through visceral storytelling rather than dialogue-heavy exposition. In this sense, Alien Romulus succeeds where Prometheus faltered. It delivers both tension and meaning. However, it doesn't match Prometheus in visual grandeur or epic ambition. Instead, it thrives in tight spaces, character tension, and grounded terror. Fede Álvarez's earlier works also provide a key reference point. His Evil Dead remake was known for its unflinching brutality and practical gore effects, while Don't Breathe demonstrated mastery over claustrophobic suspense and moral ambiguity. Those same qualities define Alien Romulus. The suffocating interiors of the space station evoke Don't Breathe's confined tension, and the meticulous sound design, every metallic echo, hiss, and heartbeat mirrors Alvarez's obsession with sensory-driven fear. His horror relies not only on what is seen but on what is heard and imagined. The influence of Don't Breathe is particularly evident in the pacing. Long stretches of silence followed by explosive violence. This stylistic continuity shows how Alvarez adapts his thriller instincts to a larger science fiction setting without losing intimacy. Alien Romulus also invites comparison to other modern sci-fi horror entries such as Life, 2017, and The Cloverfield Paradox, 2018. Like those films, Romulus centers on an isolated crew encountering an uncontrollable organism in a confined environment. However, Alvarez's version distinguishes itself by its attention to character motivation and moral subtext. Where Life offered slick visuals but shallow characterization, Romulus grounds its tension in emotional stakes and class struggle. Its depiction of human fragility against both alien and corporate forces feels more authentic and thematically layered. It succeeds where many recent genre attempts failed, by remembering that fear is most effective when tied to character empathy rather than spectacle alone. In terms of production tone and world building, comparisons can also be drawn to Blade Runner 2049, 2017, and Sunshine, 2007. While those films aren't part of the Alien franchise, they share similar concerns with technology, identity, and isolation. Alien Romulus doesn't reach the visual poetry of Blade Runner 2049 or the philosophical depth of Sunshine, but it aligns thematically. The android Andy's internal conflict recalls the replicant's search for meaning in Blade Runner, yet Alvarez keeps this subplot emotionally grounded, avoiding excessive abstraction. This choice makes Romulus more accessible to mainstream audiences while still engaging those who appreciate thematic depth. Where Alien Romulus might fall short compared to its predecessors lies in innovation. While it refines and modernizes the Alien formula, it doesn't completely reinvent it. Viewers expecting a radical departure, something that redefines the franchise's mythology as Prometheus attempted, may find the story familiar. However, this familiarity is part of its strength. Rather than overcomplicating lore, it returns the series to its primal core, survival horror against an unstoppable force. The film's success lies in execution rather than reinvention, proving that strong direction and emotional storytelling can refresh even a decades-old premise. One of the more interesting comparisons is between Alvarez and Ridley Scott as directors. Scott is known for visual grandeur and world building, creating environments that feel alive with history. Alvarez, on the other hand, focuses on moment-to-moment tension and psychological realism. In Alien Romulus, he combines both approaches, Scott's sense of world texture and his own flair for suspense. The result is a film that feels both old-school and modern. Where Scott crafts existential dread, Alvarez crafts physical dread, and together they form a cinematic conversation between generations of filmmakers. In broader genre terms, Alien Romulus can be seen as a bridge between traditional horror and contemporary science fiction. It borrows the tactile realism of 1970s cinema and merges it with modern technical sophistication. The visual effects, while advanced, serve narrative function rather than spectacle. This discipline sets it apart from over-CGI-heavy blockbusters, reminding audiences that genuine tension comes from what feels real. Ultimately, Alien Romulus 2024 stands as a successful continuation rather than a revolution. It pays tribute to the classics that defined it while demonstrating how a skilled modern director can reinvigorate familiar material. Its strengths lie in its atmosphere, performances, and emotional sincerity, even if it doesn't surpass the genre's masterpieces in innovation. Alien Romulus 2024 uses symbolism and metaphor as essential tools to deepen its narrative, transforming what might seem like a straightforward survival horror story into a layered meditation on creation, control, and human fragility. Fede Álvarez employs recurring images, colors, and visual motifs to comment on power, morality, and identity while staying faithful to the Alien franchise's long tradition of embedding meaning in horror. The film's visual language works in subtle rhythms. Objects and spaces carry emotional and thematic weight, and the way they reappear throughout the movie helps shape our understanding of both the characters and the world they inhabit. One of the most dominant metaphors in Alien Romulus is birth and creation, a recurring theme throughout the franchise but given fresh resonance here. The alien itself has always symbolized the horror of uncontrolled creation, a life form birthed through violation rather than nurture. In Romulus, Alvarez amplifies this by tying the imagery of gestation to both human and machine creation. The recurring shot of the incubation pods, glowing with pale blue light, mirrors the artificial wombs of technology. These pods symbolize humanity's attempt to play God, manufacturing life without morality or empathy. When one of the pods ruptures early in the film, releasing a half-developed creature, it visually represents the dangers of creation without accountability. Later, this motif repeats when Andy the android questions his own purpose, asking whether he, too, was created as a disposable experiment. The cycle of creation and abandonment becomes a key metaphor for humanity's destructive ambition. Color symbolism also plays a major role in establishing mood and meaning. Alvarez uses cold tones, blues, grays, and metallic silvers to create a sterile, dehumanized atmosphere. The dominance of these colors represents the suppression of natural life in favor of artificial control. When warmth briefly appears, usually in the form of amber or red lighting, it signals emotional intensity, danger, or transformation. For instance, during Rain Carradine's confrontation with the alien in the power chamber, the entire environment glows in red emergency light. The color simultaneously represents alarm, violence, and rebirth, underscoring Rain's internal struggle to survive and assert agency in a world that treats her as expendable. The color shift to red at key points creates a visual rhythm, a heartbeat of the film's emotional and thematic tension. Another significant visual motif is the recurring image of the corridor. Alvarez uses corridors not merely as settings for suspense but as metaphors for psychological entrapment and the illusion of progress. The long, winding hallways of the space station represent both confinement and the human obsession with moving forward despite knowing the path may lead to destruction. In several scenes, the camera tracks characters running through nearly identical corridors, suggesting repetition and futility. This imagery mirrors the film's theme of cyclical human behavior, the tendency to repeat past mistakes, whether through scientific overreach or corporate greed. The corridor becomes a symbolic loop, echoing the idea that humanity is trapped in its own technological maze. Water imagery is another subtle yet powerful metaphor threaded throughout the film. The presence of condensation, leaks, and dripping fluid in the decaying space station serves as a reminder of life's persistence even in mechanical decay. However, it also symbolizes contamination, how human creation corrupts natural elements. When Rain and her team first enter the flooded lab, the mixture of water and alien residue suggests both rebirth and infection. This dual symbolism reinforces the film's central tension between creation and corruption, life and death. The alien's emergence from the flooded area transforms this natural element into a vessel of horror, twisting the purity of water into something tainted by human ambition. The android Andy himself operates as one of the film's strongest living metaphors. His character embodies the blurred boundary between humanity and technology, creation and creator. Throughout the film, he mirrors human emotions yet is constantly reminded of his artificial origin. His struggle to define morality in a world that sees him as property reflects humanity's own crisis of conscience in the face of its creations. The motif of Andy repairing himself using scavenged human tools is deeply symbolic. It represents artificial intelligence trying to mimic human resilience while also surpassing it. His final act of sacrifice, in which he exposes himself to alien infection to save Rain, becomes a metaphor for redemption through empathy, suggesting that creation can surpass its maker's flaws. Another layer of symbolism can be found in the film's recurring use of mirrors and reflections. Reflective surfaces appear frequently: helmet visors, control panels, and even the metallic walls of the station. Each reflection forces characters, and by extension the audience, to confront distorted versions of themselves. In one key scene, Rain looks at her reflection in a cracked visor after losing a crew member, and the fractured image symbolizes her psychological breakdown and the fragmentation of her sense of self. This visual motif aligns with the film's larger message about identity. In a world where human and machine overlap, where corporate systems define worth, individuality becomes both fragile and defiant. The alien itself remains the most potent metaphor in the film, a living representation of unchecked progress and moral decay. Its biology, both beautiful and grotesque, mirrors the consequences of human innovation without ethical restraint. Alvarez emphasizes this through close-up shots that focus on the creature's biomechanical texture, flesh fused with metal-like precision. The alien becomes a reflection of human ambition turned monstrous. It is creation stripped of compassion, evolution without morality. Every encounter with it reminds the audience that the true horror is not the creature's existence but the human choices that made it possible. Even the title, Alien Romulus, carries symbolic resonance. Romulus, from Roman mythology, was one of the twin founders of Rome, raised by a she-wolf after being abandoned as an infant. The name invokes themes of survival, betrayal, and the violent birth of civilization. By naming the film Romulus, Alvarez draws a parallel between mythic creation and corporate empire building, suggesting that humanity's progress is built upon sacrifice and destruction. Just as Romulus killed his brother Remus to establish a new order, humanity in the film sacrifices morality and life itself to maintain dominance. This mythic echo gives the narrative an epic subtext beneath its horror structure. Sound design also plays a symbolic role. The recurring sound of heartbeat-like pulses, integrated into the score, acts as both a literal reminder of human fragility and a metaphorical heartbeat of the dying world. When the sound fades during moments of silence, it signifies the loss of humanity's rhythm, replaced by mechanical hums and alien screeches. This auditory symbolism complements the visual metaphors, creating an immersive thematic unity. By the film's conclusion, the symbols introduced throughout, corridors, reflections, color shifts, and biological imagery, come together to form a cohesive tapestry about survival, morality, and the consequences of creation. Alien Romulus 2024 occupies a crucial position within one of cinema's most influential science fiction franchises. As part of the Alien series, it stands between the classic legacy of Ridley Scott's 1979 original and the more recent prequels that explore the origins of the Xenomorph. Directed by Fede Álvarez, Alien Romulus seeks to bridge these eras by combining the claustrophobic terror of the early films with the philosophical and technological themes introduced in Prometheus and Alien Covenant. Understanding its place in the franchise means examining not only how it continues the story but also how it honors, challenges, and reinterprets decades of lore. The Alien series has always revolved around the intersection of humanity, technology, and corporate exploitation. In Alien Romulus, Alvarez revisits these central ideas but grounds them in a new generation's perspective. Set chronologically between Alien and Aliens, the film functions as a narrative and stylistic bridge. It brings back the gritty industrial aesthetic of the Nostromo while subtly foreshadowing the militarized tone of James Cameron's sequel. This middle placement allows it to connect thematic threads that once seemed separate: the existential dread of encountering an incomprehensible life form and the growing awareness of corporate manipulation. The Weyland-Yutani Corporation once again serves as the unseen architect of human suffering, and its presence reinforces the continuity that binds every entry in the series. From its opening frames, Alien Romulus announces itself as a film deeply aware of its heritage. The design of the spacecraft and colony evokes the industrial realism of the original film, with blinking consoles, narrow corridors, and an atmosphere thick with tension. Alvarez intentionally returns to analog textures, CRT screens, manual switches, and physical documents, to place the story in a recognizable timeline. This stylistic decision not only enhances authenticity but also signals respect for the era that birthed the franchise. For longtime fans, these details serve as a comforting yet haunting callback, creating a sense of continuity that feels organic rather than nostalgic. The film's title itself, Romulus, ties into the larger mythic dimension of the franchise. The name recalls the founding of civilizations and the violent birth of new worlds, echoing the franchise's recurring theme of creation through destruction. This symbolic layer fits perfectly into Alien's historical context as a science fiction myth for the modern age. In earlier films, the alien creature represented corporate hubris and humanity's fear of its own inventions. In Alien Romulus, the metaphor extends to generational inheritance, how humanity's past mistakes are repeated by those who never experienced their consequences firsthand. Alvarez uses this to comment on the cyclical nature of history, both within the story world and in the evolution of the franchise itself. For fans familiar with the prequels, Alien Romulus includes subtle connections that reward close attention without overwhelming new viewers. References to the experiments of the engineers and the synthetic creations from Alien Covenant appear through archival footage and visual hints, suggesting the lingering influence of past scientific sins. These touches help integrate the newer mythology while allowing the film to operate independently as a contained survival story. This balance between accessibility and depth is one of its greatest accomplishments, ensuring that both seasoned fans and newcomers can engage with it on their own terms. Easter eggs scattered throughout Alien Romulus provide texture and continuity for those who have followed the series from the beginning. The computer system MU/TH/UR reappears as a nod to the first film, complete with the same interface tones. The phrase, "crew expendable," resurfaces in a chilling new context, reminding audiences of the franchise's unflinching portrayal of corporate dehumanization. There are also subtler callbacks, such as the sound design echoing the original motion tracker beeps, the faint hum of the ship's engines reminiscent of the Nostromo, and the framing of the alien silhouette against strobing lights, a direct homage to the haunting imagery of 1979. These small yet deliberate details keep Alien Romulus firmly anchored within its lineage. The film also contributes to the franchise's historical context by evolving its representation of artificial intelligence. Where earlier films treated androids as extensions of corporate control or moral ambiguity, Alien Romulus presents Andy, its synthetic character, as a symbol of empathy and conscience. This shift reflects broader cultural conversations about AI in the modern era, updating the franchise's philosophical concerns for contemporary audiences. The contrast between Andy and the humans who exploit science for profit challenges the viewer to reconsider what it truly means to be human. In this way, Alvarez extends the series' tradition of using technology as a mirror for humanity's ethical failures. From a production standpoint, Alien Romulus serves as a historical return to practical filmmaking in an age dominated by digital spectacle. Just as Ridley Scott pioneered tactile realism with miniature models and physical sets, Alvarez reintroduces physical effects, practical creature designs, and on-set lighting that enhance believability. This creative choice aligns the film with its cinematic ancestors, maintaining continuity not only in story but also in visual language. It is a deliberate rejection of over-polished CGI in favor of the visceral, sweat and steam atmosphere that defined the franchise's golden age. Thematically, Alien Romulus also addresses the legacy of survival and sacrifice that runs through the Alien saga. The central protagonist, Rain Carradine, inherits the spirit of Ellen Ripley without directly imitating her. This continuity of character archetype reinforces the franchise's focus on resilience in the face of overwhelming terror. Rain's journey mirrors Ripley's evolution from vulnerability to defiance, creating a thematic bridge that respects the past while carving a new identity for the series. In historical terms, the Alien franchise has always reflected the fears of its time: corporate greed in the late 70s, military interventionism in the 80s, and biotechnology in the 21st century. Alien Romulus continues that lineage by addressing modern anxieties about artificial intelligence, corporate colonization, and the moral cost of progress. Its commentary situates the film not only within cinematic history but within the broader cultural landscape of 2024. Ultimately, Alien Romulus succeeds as both a continuation and a renewal of the Alien legacy. It honors the series' roots through faithful design, tone, and thematic consistency, while also expanding its mythology in meaningful ways. By weaving together visual callbacks, narrative echoes, and updated philosophical concerns, Alvarez ensures that Alien Romulus is more than a nostalgic return. It is a bridge between generations, preserving the franchise's historical weight while redefining its future trajectory. Alien Romulus 2024 arrived with a substantial production budget that positioned it as both a major studio investment and a carefully measured risk for 20th Century Studios. Estimated at around $75 million, the film occupies a mid-tier range for science fiction horror, a notable shift from the inflated costs that have characterized recent blockbusters. This budget reflects Fede Álvarez's emphasis on practical production, in-camera effects, and detailed world-building rather than overwhelming digital spectacle. The result is a film that feels expensive without flaunting its price tag, where every dollar serves atmosphere and immersion instead of flashy visual clutter. Compared to other entries in the Alien franchise, Alien Romulus looks and sounds far more ambitious than its cost might suggest, largely due to Alvarez's resourceful filmmaking style and the production team's commitment to authenticity. What immediately stands out about Alien Romulus is how effectively its budget is translated onto the screen. The film's design recalls the tactile environments of Ridley Scott's original Alien: grimy corridors, flickering consoles, and confined metal spaces that radiate tension. Rather than sprawling digital backdrops, Alvarez relies on physical set construction, which makes every hallway and chamber feel lived in and tangible. This approach not only enhances the sense of claustrophobia but also conserves resources by focusing the camera on what truly matters: the interaction between human vulnerability and mechanical oppression. Each scene feels crafted with precision, suggesting that the film's production team understood how to stretch a limited budget into something cinematic and grand. The special effects also reflect this balance between financial restraint and creative ambition. The alien creature, a hybrid of practical puppetry and selective CGI, demonstrates that budget-friendly innovation can yield stronger horror than expensive over-rendering. When the creature emerges from shadow, the lighting, camera angles, and physical movement all blend to create a believable nightmare that feels more threatening because it exists, at least in part, in the real world. This practical emphasis makes the movie's terror visceral and immediate, proving that visual realism is less about digital detail and more about design, texture, and timing. Marketing played a significant role in shaping Alien Romulus's financial trajectory. The promotional campaign was intentionally mysterious, mirroring the tone of the original 1979 film by teasing atmosphere rather than revealing plot details. The early trailers emphasized mood, sound, and the return to horror roots, a choice that resonated strongly with longtime fans of the franchise. By avoiding the trend of overexposure common in modern marketing, 20th Century Studios preserved audience curiosity, a crucial factor in driving initial box office performance. The strategy was designed to appeal to both nostalgic fans who grew up with Alien and younger audiences attracted to the resurgence of contained sci-fi horror after recent hits like Prey and A Quiet Place. The release strategy was also a key factor in the film's commercial outlook. Alien Romulus received a wide theatrical rollout in late summer, a window historically favorable to genre films that balance spectacle with adult storytelling. This timing allowed it to avoid direct competition with superhero blockbusters while still benefiting from high moviegoing traffic. Early tracking suggested strong interest among core sci-fi fans, and positive early reviews from festival screenings helped build momentum. Word of mouth emphasized the film's return to suspense-driven horror, differentiating it from action-heavy installments like Alien Covenant. As a result, its first-week performance exceeded expectations, and steady midweek attendance indicated strong audience retention. Financially, Alien Romulus's opening weekend brought in around $50 million globally, with domestic audiences accounting for just over half that total. While this may seem modest compared to tentpole releases, the film's controlled budget and steady international appeal positioned it for long-term profitability. Science fiction horror tends to perform strongly in secondary markets such as home streaming, premium video on demand, and collector's editions, all of which will likely extend its financial success beyond its theatrical window. Moreover, Alien Romulus's restrained budget minimizes the risk of loss while maximizing creative control, a model increasingly attractive to studios seeking sustainable returns in a shifting entertainment landscape. Beyond ticket sales, the film's performance also reflects the power of brand legacy. The Alien franchise has remained a cultural touchstone for more than 4 decades, and its recognizable iconography, the Xenomorph, the Weyland-Yutani logo, the hiss of airlocks, continues to draw viewers across generations. The marketing leaned heavily on this heritage, with taglines and imagery designed to evoke nostalgia without relying solely on it. Merchandise sales, tie-in promotions, and streaming interest on platforms hosting earlier Alien films added secondary value, extending the project's profitability through cross-platform synergy. Critical reception, while not a direct financial metric, further influenced Alien Romulus's market longevity. Positive reviews praising its practical effects, suspenseful pacing, and faithfulness to the original's spirit-boosted word of mouth among fans. Online discussions, breakdown videos, and fan theory channels on YouTube help sustain engagement long after opening weekend. In today's digital market, this form of sustained conversation often translates to delayed box office growth and later streaming spikes, a phenomenon that benefits mid-budget genre films like this one. When comparing Alien Romulus to its predecessors, it's clear that Alvarez and his producers found a sweet spot between scale and efficiency. The original Alien had a budget of around $11 million in 1979, roughly equivalent to $50 million today, and it revolutionized sci-fi horror through minimalist execution. Later entries ballooned in cost but often struggled to balance artistry with spectacle. Alien Romulus recalibrates the formula, proving that restraint can generate both artistic and commercial rewards. Its leaner production not only maintains creative integrity but also ensures financial resilience in a crowded marketplace. Ultimately, Alien Romulus demonstrates that a carefully managed mid-budget film can compete with blockbuster-scale productions when guided by a strong creative vision. Its financial strategy reflects confidence in storytelling over sheer scale, and the results speak for themselves. A movie that looks expensive, feels immersive, and delivers box office returns proportionate to its ambition. It neither overspends nor underdelivers, standing as proof that thoughtful filmmaking still holds economic power in modern Hollywood. By aligning its budget with its artistic identity and marketing with audience expectations, Alien Romulus 2024 emerges as a model of sustainable success in an era dominated by excess. Alien Romulus 2024 is a film that rewards the full cinematic experience, and how you choose to watch it will shape how deeply you feel its tension, atmosphere, and artistry. From the opening shot to the final frame, it is a movie built for immersion, one that thrives on darkness, sound, and scale. Whether you experience it in theaters, on a high-quality home setup, or eventually on a streaming platform, each setting offers a different emotional texture. The ideal choice depends on what kind of viewer you are, someone seeking intensity and sensory overload, or someone who wants to study the film's craft up close. In theaters, Alien Romulus delivers its intended impact. Fede Álvarez designed the film for large-format projection, where the claustrophobic corridors of the derelict station and the cold metallic sheen of space take on overwhelming presence. The surround sound design, from the low hum of machinery to the piercing shriek of the creature, feels like a living organism inside the auditorium. The film's cinematography thrives on darkness and contrast, using shadow and light to shape fear, and these details register most powerfully in a controlled cinematic environment. The theatrical version is also where the score by Benjamin Wallfisch can fully stretch its dynamic range, with sub-bass rumbles and high-frequency strings enveloping the audience. Every echo, every hiss, every heartbeat reverberates in a way that heightens anxiety and draws you physically into the film's world. For fans of the Alien franchise, this big-screen experience feels like a return to the immersive horror that defined the original 1979 film. If you're someone who values the technical craftsmanship of filmmaking, cinematography, sound design, or the intricacies of visual effects, the theater is the definitive way to watch. Alvarez and his team built much of Alien Romulus with practical effects, and the scale of the sets and lighting design is meant to be appreciated in full dimension. The confined settings become more oppressive, and the alien itself feels more tangible when projected on a massive screen. The pacing, which alternates between stretches of eerie silence and sudden bursts of violence, depends on uninterrupted attention. Watching in a dark theater without distractions allows the film's rhythm to work as intended, slow, deliberate, and relentlessly tightening. However, for viewers who prefer a more controlled or reflective viewing experience, watching Alien Romulus at home can offer its own kind of intensity. When the film becomes available on major digital rental platforms or streaming services, it will still retain much of its power, especially if you have access to a good sound system or noise-canceling headphones. The film's design thrives on subtlety, so a high-quality audio setup allows you to notice fine details that might get lost in a noisy theater, like the quiet hum of the space station, the faint breathing of the characters, or the layered mechanical sounds that create the atmosphere of decay. Home viewing also lets you pause and analyze visual motifs, such as the recurring use of red emergency lighting, reflections in metal surfaces, or the juxtaposition between human skin and synthetic material. These visual and auditory textures carry much of the film's symbolism and emotional weight. For casual viewers or those sensitive to intense horror, the home environment may actually be the better choice. Alien Romulus is unrelenting in its tone, bleak, suspenseful, and filled with body horror that can be overwhelming on a giant screen. Watching from home allows for breaks, rewinds, and emotional distance when needed. It's also ideal for viewers who enjoy dissecting scenes or rewatching sequences to catch foreshadowing and subtle visual cues. In that sense, streaming or digital ownership provides long-term value, turning the movie into something you can revisit rather than just experience once. Once Alien Romulus transitions from its theatrical window to digital platforms, it is expected to appear on services like Hulu or Disney Plus in the United States, given the distribution partnership under 20th Century Studios. This release will likely occur a few months after the theatrical run, following the now standard 45 to 60-day window. Premium video-on-demand options will arrive first, allowing audiences to rent or buy the film in 4K with HDR support and lossless audio. This version is especially worth it for those who want to replicate the cinematic experience at home with modern TVs and soundbars capable of Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos playback. Watching in a dark room with headphones or surround sound will still preserve much of the immersion that Alvarez and his sound team intended. Beyond streaming, physical media collectors will find value in the film's eventual Blu-ray and 4K UHD release. Fede Álvarez is known for supporting bonus features, behind-the-scenes footage, and commentary tracks. Given the practical-heavy approach of Alien Romulus, the home release will likely include extensive production breakdowns showing how sets were built, how lighting was designed for tension, and how the alien effects were achieved. For fans of the craft of filmmaking, this edition will offer not just entertainment but education, revealing how a relatively modest budget was transformed into a film that looks twice its cost. No matter how it's viewed, Alien Romulus demands focus. It's not a background movie, it's a work of tension and patience. The film rewards viewers who commit to its slow build and observe how it balances silence, sound, and dread. For that reason, It's best watched in a controlled, darkened environment without distractions. Dim the lights, turn off your phone, and let the soundscape pull you into the metallic isolation of space. The film's power lies in its ability to make you feel small, trapped, and uncertain of what's real, a feeling that only works when you surrender to it completely. For first-time viewers, the theater remains the best choice for intensity and immersion. For rewatchers, a high-quality home setup will reveal new details and thematic nuances. Either way, Alien Romulus 2024 is not just a film to watch, it's one to experience. Whether on the biggest screen or in the solitude of your living room, the movie's impact depends on your willingness to let it unsettle you. It's a return to sci-fi horror that demands your full attention and rewards it with cinematic dread, proving that even in the streaming age, some stories still belong first and foremost in the dark. If you enjoyed this video and would like us to provide reviews of every kind of movie, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.
Goodbye.